ಮಾಡೋಣ ಓಕೆ ಮಾಡಲಾ
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಬನ್ನಿ, ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದು ತಮ್ಮದು ಇದು.
A very good morning to you all. I welcome you to this second day's academic sessions of the national webinar on Gandhi and his thoughts in a changing world, organized by the Center for Canadian Studies and Center for Gandhian Studies, University of Mysore, with the financial assistance of the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, New Delhi. This morning's sessions, we have a very distinguished teacher and academician, my dear friend and colleague, Professor Muzaffar Asadi, who would be talking to us about Gandhi and the contemporary world. I'll take a few minutes to introduce Professor Muzaffar Asadi, and I do feel immensely happy and delighted to introduce Professor Muzaffar Asadi, whom we endearingly call Muzaffar Bhai. Professor Asadi is a product of Mangalore University. He did his MPhil and PhD degree from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Later, he did his postdoctorate from the University of Chicago as a Rockefeller postdoctoral fellow. He has a total teaching experience at the university level. He has almost taught for 28 years. He has also taught at Mangalore for 2 years, Goa University for 3 years, and Mysore he has taught for almost 23 years. He has also occupied some very key administrative positions. Recently, he just last year, I think he demitted office. He was formerly a special officer of Raichur University. Currently, he is the chairperson of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration. He has also served as director of Gandhi Bhavan, as well as Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy for almost 2 years. And he has also occupied various administrative positions and academic positions on the academic bodies, like the chairman of the BOS and BOE of different universities all over the state as well as in the country. And he is a very distinguished, as I said, teacher, and he has, taught at the Russian State University for Humanities in 2015 as a visiting professor and chair professor. He has also occupied chairs in different universities. He was a scholar in residence of Kerala University in 2011. He was visiting fellow of Punjab University, eminent scholar of Pondicherry University, chairman research committee Indian Academy of Social Sciences 2011, 12, 13 and 15. He was a resident scholar at Al-Taqin Institute, Sultanate of Oman in 2013. He was also chairman of the High Court Committee on Tribal Displacement and Rehabilitation 2004 to 2011, and he has the committee under his leadership has identified about 3,600 families as displaced families. He was also a recipient of the UGC JRF, only one to qualify in Gandhian thought, Rockefeller postdoctoral fellow, also a recipient of the Karnataka State Sahitya Academy Award, Kannada Sahitya Academy Award, Best Teacher Award, Lifetime Achievement Award, Dr. Abdul Kalam Lifetime Achievement Award in 2017. He has published, very widely in journals of repute. He has authored 11 books. 5 of them are in Kannada. There are 3 books on human rights, 1 book which received the Karnataka Sahitya Academy Award, and 2 books were selected by the Hindu as top 10 books. He has published almost more than 300 articles in different national and international journals and edited volumes and dailies. And he has edited almost 60 articles for the edited volumes, the peer-reviewed edited volumes. I'm immensely glad that Professor Muzaffar Asadi is amidst us today, and he'll be talking to us about Gandhi and the contemporary world. Professor Muzaffar Asadi, please.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Sheshadri. Thank you, Professor
MS Shekhar.
uh, Shekhar, sorry, Shekhar from the Gandhian Bhavan, is the director of the Gandhian Studies, and also my colleagues here and research scholars. First of all, let me also thanks to Indo-Shastri Canadian Institute for sponsoring this seminar, this webinar. What prompted me to take up this particular issue is the fact that the pandemic issue. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at the whole issue, not from only the pandemic, but also the issues which are interlinked to the development, particularly about the capitalist development and the how Gandhi looked at the capitalist development as the not as the answer, but as a destructive kind of thing. Well, some of the arguments that Gandhi made, were they be applicable to the contemporary period? The whole question is, there is a one question that quite often we come across is that, can you humanize the capitalism? Capitalism as an ideology, capitalism as a process of development, or capitalism as a mode of production, or stages of production. Is it possible to tame the capitalism, given the fact that the capitalism is now engulfing each and every part of the world and trying to link up the last man into the orbit of the larger market? That's my premises on which I'm trying to argue the case. At the same time, how it has led to the series of conflict, series of civil society activism, and also the how it has led to the large number of displacement, dislocation, and alienation of the social categories in different parts of the world. So we need to understand, by taking this capitalism as the framework of the development. But is it possible to look at Gandhi as a product of this capitalist development? I would say that there are two ways of looking at Gandhi. That is also my premises. One is that the Gandhi of his time. And I would say that there are three worlds in which Gandhi can be looked into, in the sense that his contemporary period was the period of three worlds. I would say that why I'm trying to look at that into world is the fact that they are either completely differentiated, or they are overlapping, in the sense that there are certain issues which are overlapping with each other, but at the same time, they can be diverse. They can be divided into neat categories. I would say that Gandhi was the product of three important worlds. One important world was the modern world, modernist world. That's one important word. I'll come back to that argument. Whether that modernist argument can be brought in back to the contemporary period as such. Are we in the modernist world, or are we in the postmodernist world? Are we trying to look at the modernist world as the complete formation of the capitalist development? And because then that is why I'm trying to look at the nexus between the modernism and the capitalism as such. I'll come back to that argument a little later. The second important thing, that Gandhi was a product of the colonial world. That's the second important premise, how Gandhi engaged with the colonial world. The third important thing is the world of colonized world. See, two important narratives here, three important narratives. One important narrative is the modern world. Gandhi began to witness that modern world, but the one thing is that modern world, uh, began to evolve, and it has spread to the different forms of the world, and that's the reason why Gandhi had to engage with the modern world. There's a debate with regard to the modernity and the modern world itself. Was there something called the Gandhian modernity as such? In the midst of the modern world, could Gandhi able to develop his modernity view of modernity? What kind of modernity that Gandhi would argue about? Modernity, modern world, in one sense, is also linked to the colonialism as such. That we have got something called the colonial modernity also. Because wherever the colonialism went, it also brought in new structures, new philosophies, new ideologies of life. It also brought in new ideology of political structure. For example, the issues like the equality, issues of the justice, issues of rights, issues of the freedom. Colonialism also brought in. But there are two things that the colonialism also introduced. One is the process of progressiveness. It tried to link it up with the different categories. The colonialism also tried to brought in a huge market, created the larger national market to take up the argument of AR their side. It created the huge national market. It also created interconnections, linkage between one social category with the other social category. Tried to, at the same time, colonialism also documented large number of categories into caste, into communities, into religious, into a sect and other things. That was a different kind of project that the colonialism also had. Gandhi was a witness to that one. For example, Gandhi was witness to the kind of census which was also carried. For example, if you look at 1931 and 1921, Gandhi's influence was very much felt in the context of enumeration. When the colonial state was undertaking what is called the enumeration, particularly no cooperation movement, at the time of no cooperation movement. In fact, in many places, even though in the first case, in 1921, I believe, Gandhi said that we should not associate with the colonial work of the enumeration, because that enumeration, they believed that would create binary oppositions. The binary opposition of the dominant and the dominated, the forward and the backward, and upper caste and the lower caste, marginalized, animist versus the tribal category, or criminal tribes versus the non-criminal caste. These kind of binaries were creating, that colonialism was creating. This enumeration was a part of the Modernist Project. That we need to understand. That Modernist Project came under critique under Gandhi. Gandhi in 1921, if I'm right, or the 1931, it was clear that it came under critique because that Gandhi thought that this enumeration of caste, for example, why I'm trying to bring it here, Gandhi had once had critiqued this kind of modernist project. The colonialism brought this modernist project to document the categories. Colonial project was to undertake an exercise to enlist the categories as caste categories, as communal as community categories, as tribal categories and other things. But it had other project also, the project of controlling people. Colonialism has the project of controlling people, and colonialism also had the project of hegemonizing, dominating the people. At the same time, colonialism also had the project of differentiating people. Look, these are the people who belong to the minority. These are the people who belong to the tribal category. These are the people who belong to this marginalized category and other things. So colonialism had a larger project, and that project was linked to the modernity project, Modernist Project. The Modernist Project is documented. The Modernist Project is to argue that this documentation is essential to undertake developmental activities by the state. Modernist Project was also seen as civilization project. If you read the whole documents about the colonialism was trying to say, look, these are the people who are uncivilized, barbaric, and nomadic, animist. It has its own category of constructing. Animist, backward, uncivilized, what's called the forest dwellers, and all kinds of categories that this made. But Gandhi made a critique about that one. See, this part is not being taken seriously in the narratives of Gandhi. That's a major problem. If you look at Gandhi's critique on the modernity, we invariably go to the argument of the Hind Swaraj. where we are trying to look at Gandhi's critique in Hind Swaraj, particularly his critique on the how modernism has spoiled India, particularly the question about the how India has been converted into Englistan. It was not simple the modernist project that Gandhi was concerned about. That was also linked to the issues of the civilization. See, we are concerned about, I mean, our discourses or the narratives are very much concerned about this project, particularly the project that the modernism brought in through the application of railways, doctors, or lawyers, and others, and try to understand its effect on the whole, whole of India. And Gandhi was against to the Englistan of. He was not opposed to the English, but he was opposed to the Englistan. Probably that analogy can be taken to understand the capitalism also. Was he against to the capitalist, or was he against to the capitalism? That analogy can be brought in into the contemporary period. It looks that Gandhi was not against the Englishman, but he was against the Englistan of India. Englistan in the sense that converting the India into a space for appropriation, a space of colonial domination and other things. But in our narrative, that's why I'm trying to bring this narrative about one of the projects of the colonialism was not discussed properly in the annals on Gandhism. Gandhism, and that's the reason why I'm bringing back to this narrative about one of the important project of the colonialism. I would say that project is about the Census report project. That was a modernist project, is the project of enumeration, the project of enlisting the people in the documents of the state. And that's the reason why Gandhi criticized, Gandhi said in first hand that we should not cooperate with the enumeration. We should not cooperate with the census because that would divide the people. Gandhi definitely would oppose to it. If you look at his philosophy right from the beginning, Gandhi would say that no, we should go for what's called the social cohesion. Gandhi would not differentiate between the last man and the first man in the social hierarchy. For Gandhi, even though he has been called as a Chatur Baniya, but he is not considered about. He was not reflecting that Chatur Baniya arguments. For Gandhi, a Brahmin is equivalent to a Dalit also. But the question is that for him, the last man becomes the first man. If you look at when pandemic was spreading to Gujarat, Gandhi made an attempt to go and visit the Dalits, 1890 somewhere. Before moving to second time moving to Africa, he went to the Dalit bastis. That was the first encounter that Gandhi had with the Dalits. See, why I'm trying to bring bringing that issue here and try to counterpose with the argument of the modernist project of the colonialism is the fact that Gandhi never believed in the division of the people. Gandhi never believed in enumerating the people on the issues of caste, creed, or anything for that matter. Gandhi was definitely opposed to that one. And that's the reason why when the enumerators went, it has its own effect on the enumeration. It has effect on the census writing, documentation of the categories. When Gandhi made attempts, he said, there was large number of people who boycotted the enumeration, who boycotted what's called this enumeration politics. And at the same time, the number of people, that has its effect on the total number of population. For example, the large number, the population size of the Hindus came down because of the Gandhi's call. Interestingly, in 1931, that was the last census that the colonialism did on the basis of the caste. In 1931, that was also the time, but interestingly, Gandhi did not make any call, did not give the call to boycott or to withdraw your support from the enumeration. But people perceived that Gandhi had given the what's called the support. That's the reason why, again, that has also had an effect. What I'm to saying that, look at Gandhi, the argument about a colonial modernity project was not being focused in the discourses of the Gandhism. That's the reason why we need to retrieve Gandhi from the other aspect, rather than concentrating on the issue of civilization or the modernity project, which is very much reflected in the Hind Swaraj as a text. The second important thing is that there are two other worlds that Gandhi was also concerned about. Gandhi was also concerned about the colonial state. You know, I think there are two kinds of argument. Gandhi encountered the colonial state either directly or indirectly. You know, when he was arguing about the civilization, he was actually countering the colonial state, colonialism as such, because colonialism has brought in this civilization. So he was indirectly he was attacking the colonialism. But there are times when Gandhi also made direct attack on the colonial state. But that doesn't mean that Gandhi would withdraw. Gandhi would always had this, what's called the tendency of negotiating with the state, negotiating with the colonial state, knowing very well that colonial state was very, very oppressive. For example, he adopted the strategy of pressure, compromise, pressure tactics, because that he would believe that compromise is also a element of negotiating. That's the reason why Gandhi would always say. This is quite reflected in the context of one of the farmer struggles. Gandhi would say, for example, like when the farmers or the peasants, they went on in struggle against payment of the rent, or the when they were demanding remissions in the revenue, or the remissions in the taxes. Gandhi would say that no, you cannot withdraw the taxes to the government. You keep paying it, or if we withdraw that one, the possibility of getting the Swaraj, Swaraj might be delayed. Gandhi, what he said about this is quite reflective about Gandhi's character. But Gandhi also involved, remember, masses in the national struggle, which is quite obvious. This is that while he was involving the masses into the the anti-colonial struggle, which in fact it became the mass struggle after 1920. Until then, the nationalist movement was confined to the urban middle classes and some towns and other places. But after Gandhi came, it literally became a mass movement. But he remember that he mobilized different categories for the different purposes initially. For example, like his mobilization of the farmers in Champaran, Kheda, or the Bardoli. It was confining. It was basically trying to bring the issues of the farmers to the forefront, and try to project the issues that these are the issues that has to be addressed by the state. Or even the case of in Karnataka, we have this what's called the forest satyagraha, taking up the case of the tribals, particularly those who are living at the fringes of the forest, and their issues were brought in. Gandhi took it up. Or take the case of what's called the Vaikam struggle in the Kerala, which is basically giving a voice to the Dalits. But his engagement with the Ambedkar might be a different kind of thing. I would, as Ashish Nandi calls it, as both are intimate enemies. Both were enemies, but at the same time mutually, very close to each other. Even though they might be disagreeing with that one, whatever it may be. See, here you find three worlds in which Gandhi was engaging. It's a colonial and the colonized world, where the poverty, hungry, backwardness became the factor for Gandhi to engage himself, including the diseases. For example, like the pandemic disease, whether the pandemic disease was in Gujarat or later on the pandemic disease in South Africa. Gandhi engaged with that one. Gandhi knew about the poverty. Gandhi knew about the different social structures in India, in the social categories. Like, for example, his argument about the Kisan. Kisan, he says that, when he says about the land reforms and his one argument, Sabhi Bhumi Gopal ki hai. Gopal is nothing but it belongs to everybody. Is belong to none, but everybody. So now the question is that, can you confine Gandhi to these three worlds? The modernist world, where the technology, modern values, where Gandhi encountered, critiqued, and opposed, critiqued the project of the modernity, the project, and secondly about the colonial project, which tried to hegemonize, which tried to suppress, which tried to control India. And the third was the Gandhi was a product of the what's called colonized world. He was reflecting other things. Was it enough for us to understand Gandhi in these three worlds? I would say that Gandhi is not cannot be confined to these three worlds. Probably we need to add one more word. I would say that is a post-colonial world. What happened? Gandhi, during the post-colonial, when we are talking about the post-colonial world, Gandhi is transformed. Gandhi is completely transformed into imaginary person. Gandhi is completely transformed into an idea. Gandhi is completely transformed as a voice of the voiceless, or he becomes a symbol. So we need to understand from a figurative person to a idea. Gandhi becomes an idea. So post-colonial world, he becomes an idea. In the post-colonial world, he becomes a symbol. Post-colonial world, he becomes a theory, not only theory, but also a emancipatory, symbol. Now, in that context, is it possible to understand Gandhi in one framework, as one person? Let me take up the argument of Ashish Nandi again. Ashish Nandi once said that there are multiple Gandhis. He used a term called the multiple Gandhis in the context of the post-colonial world. Uh, Probably I would like to add two more Gandhis in the contemporary period. There are four kinds of, I think, the Gandhi that becomes, essential component, or as an existential component in the contemporary period. But I would take it up the issues within the larger framework of the capitalist development, how capitalism is creating spaces for the resistance, displacement, and other things. But before that one, but at the same time, there's a kind of link between, is it possible to create a link between the modernist project and the post-colonial contemporary capitalist development? This needs to be seen. Let me see the multiple Gandhis. One Gandhi is the Gandhi of the state, quite obvious, in the contemporary period. He becomes the symbol of UN. Okay, he becomes a symbol of Indian state, where Gandhi is, idealized. Basically, is idealized through the means of the text. The large number of texts were created. Large number of institutions were created in the name of Gandhi. The large number of groups, not the groups, a large number of what's called the institutions of higher learnings were created, or large number of naming, streets were named, institutions were named, places were named. So Gandhi becomes the symbol of the state, because Gandhian principles were seen as very much akin to the nature of the state. So Gandhi was not, Gandhi's resistance was not violent. So state requires that non-violent category. That's the reason why Gandhi becomes very close to it. Gandhi believed in the peaceful agitations. The state requires that one. Gandhi believed the pressure tactics. State requires that one. So if you look at and also Gandhi believed that we need to have an inclusive society. So inclusive of everybody. There is no differences. There is no conflictual conflict between the different social categories. State also, wants this categorization, because any kind of divergence, any kind of differences would affect the state, political state, whichever it may be. So Gandhi becomes a symbol. That's the reason why Gandhi becomes a celebrative category. So he is being celebrated. He's been a part of the idea of the India. So idea of India is not, you cannot imagine in the idea of India without Gandhi. So Gandhi is, what happened is that he is, encompassing everybody. He enters into the classroom, he enters into the civil society, enters into your idea of living, your idea of coexistence. So Gandhi becomes a symbol, an idea of the state. So that's the reason why we need to understand that one way of looking at the Gandhi in the post-colonial present is the idea of the state. Looking at that one, and also the idea of India is, identical with the Gandhian ideas. That's one thing. The second is the Gandhi of the social movements. Larger number of, I'll come back to that argument little later also. Now, larger number of social movement, whether Narmada Bachao Andolan or any movement, Karnataka Rajya Raita Sangh, or the peasant movement of Karnataka, or any movement barring a critical position by the Dalit movement, probably every movement in Indian context are voting for the Gandhi. There is an discrete, not the discrete, but the open acceptance that we should go back to Gandhi again and again. So you have got a second Gandhi. So the Gandhi of the social movement, how they looked at the Gandhi, because they had a critique. I mean, because they derived Gandhi, because Gandhi has an answer to the present day, what's called the development. Gandhi is an answer for the exploitation or the appropriation. I'll come back to that a little later. Third is a Gandhi of the unknown, Gandhi of the imaginary. For example, we have not seen Gandhi. We are the product of the post-colonial, state. We are the product of the post-colonialism. So we all born in 1960s or the 1970s or 1990. We have not seen Gandhi, neither we have touched Gandhi, but we could able to imagine Gandhi. We derived Gandhi from the readings. See, we reading, for example, if I'm right, there is an imagination about the Gandhi with regard to his capacity to cure what's called the cancer and other things. So people had the imagination. For example, I think it's Akbar, Muzaffar Alam or somebody else who have argued that in the context of Uttar Pradesh, people imagine Gandhi saying that if the Gandhi had come to, Gandhi had emerged because he would throw the Britishers out of India. That's one imagination. Second imagination is his capacity to cure the diseases. Gandhi here becomes a healer of the diseases and other things. So, and third, that the Gandhi would bring social harmony. For example, this case came in the context of the Naukali, the last communal rash that broke out in the Chittagong area. They thought that very Gandhi's presence is enough to heal the wounds. Probably that is the reason why, if you look at in the Bengal region, Bengal state, the memories of the partition is literally erased, if I'm right, when compared to the western border. So Gandhi becomes a healer, becomes a person who brings down the communal conflict, or he becomes a person who can engage the last man with the state through his activities and other things. So he got an imagination. Gandhi becomes a symbol of this thing. So at the same time, and that's the reason I'm trying to say that Gandhi is imagined. But I would say in the present context, there are two Gandhis that is visible, which we are not been talking about. One is the Gandhi of the anti-global, Gandhi of the anti-capitalist, and the Gandhi, and there is one more one can add, Gandhi as an alternative to the global world. I'm trying to say, look, these three Gandhis has to be brought in here. That means we need to construct Gandhi as an extension of the figurative Gandhi. The idea of Gandhi has to be constructed in different way. One is the Gandhi as an anti-capitalist. There is a tendency to argue that Gandhi was completely opposed to the capitalist as such, or the capitalism as such. But I would say that Gandhi was opposed to the idea of capitalism rather than the capitalist. This differentiation we need to understand, because this idea of capitalism is in the Gandhian context, it would be different kind of thing, where he tries to that idea is appropriating, that because it creates a category of people who believes in the profit making, or would believe in appropriating labors of the others. And that's the reason why Gandhi was opposed to the capitalism, but he was not opposed to the capitalist. Look at his engagement with the Bajaj or Jamnalal Bajaj and capitalists. If you read his own autobiography, wherein he expected and accepted donation from an unknown capitalist. And why, at the same time, if you read about what's called his autobiography, you would understand one fact. Why Gandhi selected Ahmedabad as that Sabarmati ashram. There's one argument saying that because it has the mill owners around that places, he wanted to run the ashram. Who would pay money for that? Nobody would pay. Gandhi knew very well that if the mill owners, his ashram is very close to the mill owners, then obviously they will donate, and that would help him to run the ashram. Who supported, if I'm right, who bought or who paid 150 rupees to buy Seva Gram? It is a capitalist. So, and Gandhi engaged with this capitalist. But at the same time, he was, very much opposed to the capitalism. He was, for example, like in the case of the Ahmedabad hand mill workers, he came out with the argument of the trusteeship. There is one argument in the contemporary period, whether this argument of the trusteeship should be equated with the corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility, CSR, is equivalent to the trusteeship. But I would say that both are different, but at the same time, it has the, what's called the influence from the Gandhian tradition. The trusteeship is based on the, mutual trust of capitalism. And also it believes in a kind of distribution aspect of the trusteeship. We should understand that. A big capitalist would, hold the property as a trust on the basis of the trust and as on behalf of everybody. Social responsibility is slightly different in the corporate sector, because the corporate sector, it's a kind of, dana. I would say that it's a percentage of dana giving to the, social activities rather than, the literally holding the property as a trust. That's the reason why both are different. But the thing is that Gandhi was against the capitalism as an idea, capitalism as an ideology. And that's the reason why we need to bring that argument here. Did Gandhi was opposed to this, Gandhi, had he lived here in the contemporary period, would he oppose this capitalism? See, Gandhi would definitely oppose the present day form of capitalism. The present day, what are the characteristics of the, is it over? No,
No, we couldn't.
Good.
Okay. Gandhi was opposed to the present day, definitely would be opposed to the present day capitalism, despite the fact that the capitalist would say that, look, we have been, imbibing certain values of the Gandhi. For example, like they would say that we are opposed to the employment of the child labor. For example, there are companies, I think the Nike or some other companies, which have been saying that we are not going to employ the tribal. I'm sorry, the children. So we are very close to Gandhi, child labor, because Gandhi would oppose definitely. We are also opposed to what is called the appropriation of the global commons. For example, the global commons like the atmosphere, environment, climate change. There are times when Gandhi would definitely oppose to this, the present day, climatic change arguments, where the climatic change would have the consequences on the everyday life practices. It would change the whole notion about the living. It would definitely change the characteristics of the global environment. Gandhi would definitely oppose to this appropriation of the natural resources. See, we're knowing very well that the natural resources like Amazon forest or the forest, the minings in the Chhattisgarh and other places would definitely has its consequence on the ecology. Ecology in the sense that it would definitely increase the temperature of the world. It will also change the seasons, etc. This is basically the work of the capitalism. This is being done by the capitalists. Now, capitalism is appropriating the natural resources. It is appropriating the global commons. It is also appropriating the productivity of the people and other things. And Gandhi, but at the same time, capitalism would argue that, look, we are also Gandhians because we are also now trying to reduce the carbon emissions. We are trying to bring down bring down the world temperature. Thanks to the pandemic, probably the temperature has, again has come down. Probably we require to have more and more lockdowns in this sense. In that sense, I'm trying to argue that one. Gandhi had his own argument about the pandemic. That's a different kind of thing. I'll come back later on. But he would say definitely, look, capitalism would say, look, we also are Gandhians. One side they would appropriate, they would exploit, but at the same time they would also say that we are Gandhian because that we are reducing the carbon emission, we are reducing the global temperature and other things. We are reducing the what's called the appropriation of the natural resources. We are regenerating through the corporate social responsibility and other things. It was not the simple that thing. Look at the way the capitalism has created conditions for the large number of farmers committing suicide. Look at the best example is the Indian case. Where do you understand? How do you understand? Is it possible to understand is by saying that Gandhi was responsible? I would say that which was not the Gandhi responsibility. Gandhi was not responsible. It is a capitalist development that has created condition for large number of farmers committing suicide. Take the case of India. The second green revolution, I would say that this is a crisis began with the adoption of the new technology in agriculture, beginning with 1960. But it perpetuated, it sharpened with the arrival of the globalization in 1990s. Globalization is backed by the capitalist development. Even though it came to the grab of the liberalism, democratization and other things. And most important thing is that it came through the grab of the marketization, the larger global market. But in fact, it is all backed by the new forms of the capitalism. To use Prabhat Patnaik's argument, it was a period of late capitalist development. Late capitalist development is an aggressive path of development where the multinational companies or the global capital, any forms, for example, it may come through the cultural forms, like the Coca-Cola becomes a symbol of the cultural forms. Fast food become the culture of the global culture. It comes through the different cultural forms, your dress, your materials, material production, your food, all these cinemas, mobiles or internet and all these things, they become the symbols of the cultural industries. They are enveloping, they are interconnecting a last man with the international market. Remember that. It also bringing huge amount of crisis. a huge amount of crisis. For example, it is bringing the crisis at the domestic level. Today, every family is facing the deep internal crisis. It's also bringing the crisis in the economy. Economy is largely under threat, or it's undergoing the recession, or quite often it is undergoing what's called the what crisis and other things. Economy, society, everything is undergoing crisis, mainly because of this, the onslaught of the capitalism, onslaught of the late capitalism, I would say. So now the question is that particularly this has affected on the different social categories. Like, for example, the farmers. So that's the reason why we have got a large number of farmers committing suicide. The second is that this has created large number of displacement of the people from their original inhabitants. For example, in the name of extracting minerals, extracting natural resources, tribals have been displaced, different farmers have been displaced. For example, in the name of township, special economic zones. So you have got people being uprooted. Villages have been uprooted, destroyed, or the villages have become part of the history. Nobody knows about what happened to, villages. What happened to these people? Go to Bangalore, nearby Bangalore. Every month, if I'm right, with the this that's the reason why every policy that is now being brought in here with the Indian context or the global context are meant to allow the global capital to display global capital to enter into the domestic level. For example, you take the case of the agriculture policy and the land policy. Land policy would definitely displace thousands and thousands of people tomorrow. It will destroy the villages. It will absorb the villages with the metropolitan city. I will not be surprised tomorrow you will not see any agriculture land between Bangalore and Mysore. I'm definite about it. I will not be surprised in case every 3 months one village is being absorbed into the Bangalore cosmopolitan city. Quite obvious, because the way the global capital is pumping its money, the way the capitalism is entering into the domain, whether through the special economic zones, whether through the townships, whether through the market and other things, it is clearly displacing the people. When you look at Gandhi, is it possible to locate Gandhi? I said that there are two ways, two Gandhians in this, three Gandhians actually. I'm looking at now two. Three Gandhians. One Gandhian is anti-capitalist. Okay, I would say that anti-capitalism. He should be treated as Gandhi as anti-capitalism. So, what kind of capitalism that Gandhi would talk about? Probably that argument is very much akin to the argument Gandhi as an alternative. Gandhi as another world is possible. Now the second argument is that I would say that there's a primary argument also. Two arguments. One is the anti-global Gandhi, or the anti-global Gandhi in this particular context, in the contemporary period, where the path of development is largely a globalized path of development, which is trying to link it up everybody. The globalization has the tendency of introducing the cultural practices which are not akin to the locality, rather it is akin to the Western world. So globalization is also transforming the identities of the people, common people, everybody for that matter. So it is anti-global tendency, and Gandhi is symbol of anti-globalism. Particularly, he is very much apparent in large number of civil society activism, social movements, and other things, including the anti-terrorist activity, like Malala, when she was attacked, they later on by the mullahs of the Pakistan, Afghanistan, and others. And she said later on that Gandhi inspired her. Gandhi inspired her to withstand against the conservative forces. And look at that means that Gandhi is influencing the categories, whether the Burmese leader or anybody for that, or the social movements like the World Social Movement, World Social Forum, or Alavia Compensia. People's Global Action, or any other. If you look at, take the anti-global movements in the global level, where Gandhi is brought back. Gandhi's Hind Swaraj is again and again read, because that they would say that there is alternative involved in this. So Gandhi becomes an alternative to the present day globalized path of development. For example, his critique of the Western civilization. Even though, as I said earlier, Gandhi was a product of the modernity. The product of the modernity is now, he critiqued that modernity, but that very argument of critique, argument about the against the Western civilization, the modernity, again brought into the contemporary period to understand and to critique, as well as to argue that there's a possibility of challenging the world hegemony, world order, by saying that we need to, go for the alternative. That's the reason why there is a euphoria that is an argument that has been created, that Gandhi is an alternative. As I said earlier, Gandhi is an alternative to the global commons. Exploitation of the global commons. Gandhi is an alternative to the capitalist development as such, or the way the capitalism is now trying to appropriate. In other words, the argument of World Social Forum, for example, like a civil society group, which coined the word called "another world is possible," which is actually countering to the phenomena called TINA phenomena. TINA is nothing but there is no other alternative to the present day globalization or the liberalization. In fact, that word was coined by none other than Margaret Thatcher. Now the whole argument is that another world is possible, and this is nothing but the voice of the Gandhi. Gandhi would say that we should go back to the nature. We should go back to the retrieving the village economy. We should go back to the our social life, harmonious life. Look at, for example, one example I would give, Gandhi, when the issues about the pandemic came in Gujarat, as well as in the context of the South Africa, Gandhi advocated Indian medicines, in Indian what's called the medicine, medicine, not Ayurvedic, but using this mud gid and other things as a solution. Indigenous variety of medicine to be used as against the what's called pandemic. The second was that he also advocated, if I'm right, simple food. His argument, he's also says that one should not have the full meal. It's a simple argument, but very, very powerful argument. One should not eat full meal because there's somebody who is hunger. You need to give that, it's like, argument of property is a theft. If you have the full meal, which obviously means that that's a theft, because that you're thieving food from others. So you should distribute that food to the man at the margin. So Gandhi becomes the most important in this context also, where the poverty, hunger, needs to be addressed by the contemporary period. And at the same time, he talks about the alternatives. Alternatives. For example, like another world is possible. Another world is countering to the world, the global world, where the capitalism dominates. He believes in the indigenous variety of development, and also believes in creating a rational human beings, given the fact that the contemporary world has created irrational human beings. Look at his whole concept of the satyagrahis, wherein his argument that the satyagraha is not only in the physical sense, but also he has to have the purity in inner self. Like, for example, he has to have the rationalism. He has to be a very reasoned person. He has to shun the violence, and he has to believe in the coexistence, or what is called the class harmony and other things. So his perfect argument of a satyagrahi That's the reason why when somebody from Chikmagalur wrote a letter to Gandhi saying that I am a lawyer, I'm a coffee planter lawyer, I should be allowed to participate in Dandi Yatra. Gandhi refused him.
1930.
Huh? 1930. Gandhi refused him, saying that, he did not say that, but it's quite obvious. Because you have got a haham. You're got a, you feel
Planter.
that, yeah,
Planter.
he's a planter. You're a planter, you feel that you are a big man and other things. Gandhi definitely opposed to that kind of thing. So the whole, in the present context, you require to have a satyagraha, a new kind of satyagraha, who is completely shunning this violence. So another world is possible unless and until you bring back that satyagraha into the present day context. Probably here the Gandhian modernity works. As I said earlier, there is a debate in Indian context. A debate is about, is there something called the Gandhian modernity? You have got a colonial modernity, but is it possible to create a Gandhian modernity? I would say that yes, Gandhian modernity is possible through the creation, construction of categories as satyagrahis, who shuns, who completely give up the idea of violence, violence against the community, violence against the environment, violence against the other people, individuals, completely give up this idea of violence. And also its modernity is very much rational kind of thing. It is not irrational. For example, when he was addressing even the dictatorials like Hitler, his argument was very, very much rational. How many people you can kill? Whole argument Gandhi put forth, through to a fascist like Hitler. How many people that you can kill? 100,000s? But I got a moral force. Gandhi would say that I got a moral force. Moral force is the most important. Probably another world is possible by creating another modernist Gandhi, probably bringing back the modernity critique and transferring the critique into a Gandhian modernity critique, Gandhian modernity. And it's a specific to not only to India. Let us not confine Gandhi to the contemporary India. Let us take Gandhi to the world level. Gandhi has been, no, in fact, the Gandhi has gone beyond Indian borders. Gandhi cannot be confined to India, given the fact that the borderline, he has been borderless right from the beginning of the 1947, because he becomes, as I said earlier, Gandhi has become an idea. Gandhi has become a symbol. Gandhi has become an imagination. So, in that particular context, Gandhi would remain as a what's called the idea of resistance, Gandhi as an alternative, Gandhi as a new modernist, Gandhi as a what is called the plausibly a new prophet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 10 minutes debating.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Asadi, for a wonderful, insightful talk about Gandhi and how he is very much part of the contemporary world. I'll quickly recollect what Professor Asadi has said in his talk. He begins by drawing our attention to the three worlds from which Gandhi has emanated. And then he goes on to talk about how his Hind Swaraj is a critique of Western civilization and how it needs to be looked at today as an alternative to the Western mode of development. And he raises very crucial questions like how can we locate Gandhi in a post-colonial contemporary period. Then he also draws our attention to Ashish Nandi's multiple Gandhis. For example, Gandhi of the state, Gandhi of the social movements, Gandhi of the unknown, and Gandhi of the subalterns. And then finally concludes making a very, very important observation that Gandhi was against, you know, capitalism, and what is the kind of capitalism Gandhi would have approved of in the current scenario, and then makes a very valid point at the end of his talk by saying that it is not good to limit Gandhi just to the context of India, because Gandhi is more, his practices are more applicable, his thoughts are more applicable to the entire world, the entire universe. Thank you so much, Professor Asadi, for that wonderful talk. And I'm sure there are many questions for you, and we can go in for the questions. So the participants can post your questions on the box, or you can straight away ask Professor Asadi, who is with us today.
Yeah.
Questions, Ilya? Milan? Participants can directly ask questions to Professor Asadi. He is very much with us here. Please go ahead. One by one, please.
ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ?
48 ಜನ 50 ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ನೀವು ಮಾಡಿದಾಗಲೇ 500 ಜನ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು.
ಈ ಸಲ
ಪ್ಲೀಸ್.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah,
Yes. Am I audible?
yeah, you are.
Okay, thank you.
Sudarshan is ready.
This looks like a tea break now.
Hello, sir.
There are question and
Minutes per participants. For debate.
ಬಂದಾರೆ ಸುದರ್ಶನ್?
ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು No question?
ನನ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲ.
ಕೇಳಿ.
ಆಯ್ತಾಯ್ತು, ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ನನಗೇನು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ.
Okay.
I am fine, thank you.
If participants have any questions, please go ahead.
Chat box ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಇದೆ. Asadi, I enjoyed listening to you as usual.
ಜೀವನ್.
Yeah. Pleasure listening to you every time. Chat box ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಇದೆ, ಓದ್ಲಾ ಅಥವಾ ನೀವೇ ಓದಿ?
ಹೇಳಿ.
ನೋಡಿ, ಒಬ್ಬರು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆರಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಟ್ರೂತ್, ಹೌ ಸಮಾಜಕ್ಕೆ, ಹೌ ಡಿಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೂಯೆನ್ಸ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಅಂತ. ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಿ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ಕಿಪ್ ದಟ್. ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ರೇಖಾ ಯಾವ್ದೂ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಇಸ್ ನೇಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಟೇಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೋರೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವಿವರಿಸಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆ. Exploitation
is a name for exploitation and exploration. Your views on it, how Gandhi has been appropriated, that is what.
ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ can I answer it in Kannada or English?
No, you can answer it in whatever language.
Okay. Gandhi, there are two ways of Gandhi, whether Gandhi has exploited. That there is an argument saying that Gandhi exploited the sentiment of the people, particularly, and Gandhi exploited the, sentiments or the weakness of the, different social categories as such. For example, like when they were talking about how Gandhi became the agency, he became an agency. He became an agency of the farmers. He became an agency of the tribals. He became an agency of the Dalits. He became an agency of the women and all these things. Probably the argument is that Gandhi trying to appropriate the voices of these people. He did not allow them to have an independent voices. Gandhi had his own argument. If they had these independent voices vis-a-vis the colonial state, because this would have weakened the nationalist movement. The exploitation in that sense was carried because that he thought that to strengthen the nationalist movement, that becomes an essential component. That's the reason why he did not allow the farmers to have independent voices, even though later on, after 1935, you got a series of farmers movement coming up in different parts of India. Or it became Gandhi, as a resistance. You have got different political parties emerging, particularly within the Congress itself. You have got the socialists emerging and then other things. So the exploitation needs to be understood in the context of the nationalist movement. why Gandhi exploited? Exploited because that he thought that to strengthen the nationalist movement and to project the nationalist movement as a single voice, as well as a homogeneous voice, he required all these all these categories, and he became the agency. When you talk about the subalterns, same kind of argument has been made. So in that sense, Gandhi appropriated for a particular cause. Remember that. And it was not simply because he wanted to exploit them to silence them. No, it was not to silence them, but for a larger project of the nationalist movement. That's one thing. That's one thing, Gandhi. The second was the, what is the question?
Second question is Gandhi's political philosophy. How can it change the contemporary world? Please explain, sir.
Well, there are, if you look at the Scandinavian country, if you look at where I think the happiness index is much higher, wherein you have got the absence of.
Hello, sir. Na Padmaja Desai.
Tell me.
ಆಯ್ತಾಯ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಬಿಡಿ.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಎರಡನೇ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಯಾವುದು?
ಅವ್ರದೇ.
ಇದು political philosophy.
Yes, political philosophy. That is Padmaja's question.
Padmaja is from Raichur, is it?
Yes.
Padma Desai.
Desai, remember. Okay. Okay. Political philosophy, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಗಾಂಧಿಯ political philosophy ಅದು ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಜಗತ್ತಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆಗಳಿವೆ. ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಈಗ ಇವತ್ತು ದೇಶಗಳು ಯಾವುದೆಲ್ಲ ವೈಲೆಂಟ್ ದೇಶಗಳಾಗಿರ್ತವೆ ಅವುಗಳು ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಆಗುವುದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಉಡ್ ಬಿ ಸ್ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಿನೇವಿಯನ್ ಕಂಟ್ರಿ ನೋಡಿ. ಅವುಗಳು ಇವತ್ತು ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಮುಂದೆ ಇವೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಹ್ಯಾಪಿನೆಸ್ ಇಂಡೆಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅತಿ ಎತ್ತರದಲ್ಲಿದೆ. ವೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ವೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತವೆ, ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಇರ್ತವೆ, ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ತೀವ್ರತರವಾದಂತಹ ಪ್ರತಿರೋಧಗಳಿರ್ತವೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗಳಾಗುದಿಲ್ಲ. ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮಬಾಳ್ವೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮಚಿತ್ತವಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೆ ನೀವು ಹಂಚುತ್ತೀರಾ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಿ ಟ್ರೈಬಲಿಸಮ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ ಇಜಾಮ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಇಜಾಮ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬೇಸಿಕಲಿ ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೆ ಹಂಚುವಂಥದ್ದು. ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೆ ಈಕ್ವಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಹಂಚುತ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯ ಸಂತೃಪ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ತರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನೀವು ಯು ಶುಡ್ ನಾಟ್ ಗೋ ಫಾರ್ ದಿ ವಾರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗದಂತ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳು ಸಮೃದ್ಧಿಯಾಗಿರುವಂತ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳು ನೋಡಿ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೈಸೂರು ಪ್ರಾಂತ್ಯ ಈ 1799 ನಂತರ ಬಹುಶಃ ಮೈಸೂರು ಪ್ರಾಂತ್ಯ ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಕೂಡ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಹುಶಃ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಈ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, KRS ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಕಾವೇರಿ ಕಟ್ಟಡ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅಣೆಕಟ್ಟು ಬರ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಯುದ್ಧ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲಗಳನ್ನು ಖಾಲಿ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಜಗಳ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಸಮುದಾಯವನ್ನು 20-30 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಂಡೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು ಕಮ್ಯುನಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅದರ ಇಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಒಂದು 30 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಂಡೋಗುತ್ತೆ ಸಮುದಾಯ. ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ಗಳಿರ್ತವೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಆಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದ ಕಾರಣ ನನಗೆ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಯಾವ್ದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ವಿಟ್ಜರ್ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್, ಹಾಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಿನೇವಿಯನ್ ಕಂಟ್ರೀಸ್ ಯಾವುದೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ ಆ ಕಂಟ್ರಿಗಳು ಬಹಳ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಬಹುಶಃ ಅವುಗಳು ಗಾಂಧಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡುವುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಗಾಂಧಿಯ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿಫಲನಗಳಿವೆ. ಸೊ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಮಾಡೆಲ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತಂದು ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶ ಇವತ್ತು ಸೂಪರ್ ಪವರ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತಿತ್ತು. ನಾವು ಒಂದು ಕಲ್ಪನೆಯನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಇತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ, ಏನಂದ್ರೆ 2020 ಭಾರತ ಒಂದು ಸೂಪರ್ ಪವರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಸೂಪರ್ ಪವರ್ ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೂಪರ್ ಪವರ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಇಂಥ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ನೀವು ಯುದ್ಧೋನ್ಮಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಜಗಳಗಳನ್ನು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕಂಟೆಂಪರರಿ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಈಗ ಕೆನಡಾವನ್ನು ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಕೆನಡಾ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಬೇಡ, ಸ್ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಿನೇವಿಯನ್ ಕಂಟ್ರಿ ಬೇಡ. ಕೆನಡಾ ಯಾಕೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಳೆದಿದೆ? ಅದೇನು ಯುದ್ಧ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೋಗುದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಮೆರಿಕ ತರ. ಅಮೆರಿಕ ತರ ಯುದ್ಧ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೋಗುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಜಗತ್ತಿನ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಯುದ್ಧ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದ ಕಾರಣ ಅದು ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಅದ ಕಾರಣ ಯುದ್ಧ ಅದು ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲಗಳನ್ನು ನಾಶ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅದೇ ಕಾರಣ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಗಾಂಧಿಯ ಶಾಂತಿ, ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹೇಳಿದ ವಾದಗಳು ಇವತ್ತು ಕೂಡ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸ್ತದೆ.
Biscuit also.
I'm sure you have more questions to Professor Asadi since there is paucity of time and we have to move to the next session.
Thank
And,
you.
we already have Professor Sudarshan Iyengar online. So you can post your questions to Professor Asadi's talk. If you have any queries, observations to make, please post it in the box and he will be able to answer it to you. Thank you, Professor Asadi,
Thank
for
you,
being with
Professor.
us and for that wonderful talk.
Your back details.
So you yes, okay.
Thanks to Padmaja.
Okay, you, Professor Sudarshan. Yes, come. Start ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ.
ನಾನು ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಾ?
ಇರಿ.
ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಇದೆ 12 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ಹೊರಡ್ತೀನಿ.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಾ?
ಬಂದೇ
ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಓಕೆ.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸರ್.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
This is Vijay Sheshadri from Mysore.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
This is Professor M.S. Shekhar of the
Namaskar, sir.
Studies.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
On behalf of the University of Mysore, as well as the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, I extend a very warm welcome to Professor Sudarshan Iyengar to this session, and he would be speaking to us about decentralized economy for sustainable development. I would take a few minutes to introduce Professor Sudarshan Iyengar, and I do feel it an honor and privilege to introduce him. Professor Sudarshan Iyengar is a PhD in economics. He is formerly the Vice Chancellor of Gujarat Vidyapith, Ahmedabad, from 2005 to 2014, which was founded by Mahatma Gandhi ji. He was also the former director for the Center for Social Studies at Surat from 2004 to 2005, and Gujarat Institute of Development Research, Ahmedabad, 1999 to 2004. He was chair professor of Gandhian philosophy at IIT Mumbai from August 2016 to February 2018. His major research areas include Gandhian thoughts and practice, natural resource development and management, people and civil society institutions. He has also occupied some key positions like he was a member of the management boards of voluntary organizations, active in rehabilitation of tribal people displaced in the Narmada Dam projects during the 1990s. He was very active in 2001 in the relief operations and rehabilitation of earthquake-affected people in the Kutch area of Gujarat. He was also the vice chairperson of the high-level Dandi Memorial Committee, and currently he is member of the National Gandhi Heritage Sites Mission by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. He has published more than 70 research articles and 8 books, including a very important book titled Gandhi Ji and Sanitation, which is published by the Government of India Publication Division in 2016. It's a pleasure, sir, to have you with us today, and I invite you to deliver this plenary talk on decentralized economy for sustainable development. Professor Sudarshan Iyengar.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನು ಅಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡೋಕೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು ಚಿಕ್ಕಬಳ್ಳಾಪುರ, ಆದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಬೆಳೆದಿರೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಕಚ್ನಲ್ಲಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ ನೀವು 2001 ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಅರ್ಥಕ್ವೇಕ್ ರಿಹ್ಯಾಬಿಲಿಟೇಷನ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಕಡೆನೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡೋ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ, ತಮಿಳ್ ಮಾತಾಡೋ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ. ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಕನ್ನಡ ನಾನು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತಗೋಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ವ್ಯಾಖ್ಯಾನ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಷ್ಟ ಅಷ್ಟೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷ ಆಗಿರೋದು, ನಾನು ಹೇಗೆ ಗುಜರಾತಿ ಹಿಂದಿಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನೋ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಸುಲಭವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಧಾರಾ ಪ್ರವಾಹವಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಗಿರೋದು. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೂ ಸರೋಗಿರೋದು. ಇನ್ನೊಂದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಗಾಂಧಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ನಂದೊಂದು ಮಾತು. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನನಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಂತಾಪ, ಮನಸ್ತಾಪ, ಇನ್ನೇನಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ನಾನು 2 ಭಾಷೆಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಸರೋದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓಕೆ, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು, ಬಹಳ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಒಂದು ತಪ್ಪು ಮಾಡಿದೀನಿ. ಈ ವರ್ಚುವಲ್ ಸಭೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಅಹಂಕಾರ ಬೇರೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ನನ್ನ ಟೈಮಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಾನು ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅಹಂಕಾರ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಕೆಲಸನೂ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಶೇಷಾದ್ರಿಗೆ, ನನಗೆ 30-31 ಎಲ್ಲ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ಗಳಿರುತ್ತೆ ಮಾರ್ಚ್ ಎಂಡಿಂಗು, ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ. ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಅಕಾಮಿಡೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿ ಅಂದ್ರು. ಅದು ಅವ್ರ ಸಾಧು ಭಾವ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ನೀವು ಹಂಗೆ ಯೋಚಿಸಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ನನಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಒಂದು ಸಂಭಾವನೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ. ಲೆಟ್ ಮಿ ನಾವ್ ಟರ್ನ್ ಟು ದ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್. ಈ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಶಬ್ದನೇ ಈಗ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅ ವೆರಿ ಆಫ್ ಎ ರೀಸೆಂಟ್ ಒರಿಜಿನ್. ಇದುವರೆಗೂ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಅದಕ್ಕೇನು, ಗಾಂಧಿ ಜೊತೆ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ಡ್ ಇಕಾನಮಿ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ, ಈ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅದು ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಅದರ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತಿ ಬಹಳ ಇದೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ಸ್, when we talk about United Nations sustainability goals, we just presume that yes, that is the new thing, but that's how the world thinks, that's how the humanity thinks. But it is time that we revisit also Gandhi and try to see whether he had something to say. My own interpretation is that sustainable development anta shabda nam shabdakoshadalli barod kashta. ಗುಜರಾತಿಲಿ ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಒರಿಜಿನಲ್ ಶಬ್ದ ಕಾಯಿನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳೋದು, ಅದು ನಿಮಗೂ ಅರ್ಥವಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದೇನೆ, ಸಂಪೋಷಿತ್ ವಿಕಾಸ್. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ UN's accepted definition of sustainable development is known to all of us. You must use your resources in such a way that you are able to live for the next generation. Intergeneration and intra-generational equity ಬಗ್ಗೆ sustainable development, the commission which was set up by the UN 1984 report which came out, our definition is mostly accepted. ಅದರ ಮೇಲೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬೇರೆ ಆಗಿವೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ಮಿಲೇನಿಯಂ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ಸ್ ಬಂತು. ಮಿಲೇನಿಯಂ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ವಿ, in 15 years we will achieve the millennium development goals objective. 15 ವರ್ಷ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ವಿ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ರಿವ್ಯೂ ಅಂಡ್ ಫೌಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಕಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಏನಾಗಿಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ, ಅಷ್ಟೇನಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಇನ್ನ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರೆದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ಗುಡ್, ಅದೇನು ತಪ್ಪಿಲ್ಲ. ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಗ್ರೋ ಅಂಡ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಗ್ರೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟಿ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಡೂ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ ಇನ್ ದಟ್ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್, ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಗೋಲ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಸೆಟ್, ದೇ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ರಾಂಗ್. ಆದರೆ in the context in which we talk about sustainable development, we have to revisit that. So in this lecture, what I will try to do is, in this sharing rather, what I would like to do is that I will just say what are these sustainable development goals and how would Gandhi sort of reflect on it. I begin from that. And then we talk about the decentralized economy, which is his solution, irrespective of the problems that the 21st century is facing. And when we read the sustainable development goals, we realize also that these sustainable development goals are set up to counter or negate the negative externalities of economic development that have taken place and the challenges that we have. So if we start from that, then we see that what are these sustainable development goals. Broadly, there are 17, and each sustainable development goal has been sort of again detailed, and they have many sub goals as well. Now, these are not very fantastic, some new goals that we are talking about. if we just make a reference to that, it is very simple. You have to, the first four says that you have to end extreme poverty, you have to end hunger, ensure healthy lives, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, and promote lifelong learning. Yeah, nobody is going to deny that. And even Gandhi was also talking in those days, the discussion was the same. Now, Gandhi would have agreed on all this, also on the fifth, which talks about gender equality and empowerment. Then he talks, the seventh, sixth is water and sanitation, that the water and sanitation management should be for all. Gandhi would have agreed mostly. Then access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, modern energy, Gandhi would not have said no to this, except that he would have given priority to human energy. Promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Gandhiji would have agreed on full employment. Now, decent economic development is a problem. The problem, actually, the problematic starts from that. Adik now Baron. Gandhiji would not have agreed and did not agree to the following goals, which are build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Innovation, he would have said yes, but industrialization, no, the way it is going on. Then make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe and reliant and sustainable, resilient and sustainable. He did not want a city civilization, so he wouldn't have agreed. Ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns, yes, definitely. In the next four are actually belonging to the present day problems, which were not there. Climate change, conserving and sustainable use of ocean, sea, protect, restore, and terrestrial ecosystems and all that. 16th, 17th, he was talking about it. Peace in the society, peaceful society, global partnerships. So Gandhi's mainly disagreement Gandhi's main disagreement he was not for an industrialized society. We have now gone beyond that. We are not now talking about industry. Now we have already come into post-industrial society. But why he was talking about what actually was the problem? Why did he not like the industrial society? Actually, his entire approach to economics, economic system, political economy arises out of his critique of the industrial civilization to which he was exposed. And from there, he started making his own original contributions. Now, you all, I don't know whether Hind Swaraj is translated in Kannada or not, but I wish that it is. And for all of you who can read English, there is no problem. But you see the point, why, what was he actually trying to criticize in the industrial society is now applying to us also. Hind Swaraj was written in 1909. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗಮನ ಕೊಡಿ, ನಾನು ಈ ಪ್ಯಾಸೇಜ್ ಓದ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಹಿಂದ್ ಸ್ವರಾಜಿಂದಲೇ ಓದೋದು ನಾನು. ದ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಯುರೋಪ್ ಟುಡೇ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಯುರೋಪ್ ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಓದ್ಬೋದು. ಈಗ ಆ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ 1909 to 2021 we have come in 111 years, we have come to the same situation, and we call ourselves now a developed economy. We are thinking that we are topping. The people of Europe today live in better built houses than they did 100 years ago. This is considered an emblem of civilization, and this is also a matter to promote bodily happiness. Formerly, they wore skins and used spears as their weapons. Now they wear long trousers for embellishing their bodies. They wear a variety of clothing. And instead of spears, they carry with them revolvers containing 5 or more chambers. Formerly in Europe, people plowed their lands mainly by manual labor. Now, this is called sign of civilization. Formerly, men traveled in wagons. Now they fly through the air in trains at the rate of 400 miles per day. This is considered height of civilization. It has been stated that as man progresses, they shall be able to travel in airships and reach any part of the world in few hours. Men will not need to use their hands and feet. They will press a button and will have their clothing by their side. Agle ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ. They will press another button and they will have their newspaper. A third, a motor car will be waiting for them. They will have a variety of delicately dished up food. Zomato will serve you now that each day special things if you want. Everything will be done by machinery. Formerly, when people wanted to fight with one another, they measured between them their bodily strength. Now it is possible to take away thousands of lives by one man working behind a gun from a hill. This is civilization, not you papa ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ from the hill ಅಂತ 1909 ನಲ್ಲಿ. ಈಗ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಭಯ ಪಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ವಿ. ಟ್ರಂಪ್ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ ರಿಮೋಟ್ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಗತಿ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೀವಿ ನಾವು. We have already come to that stage. So please realize that this industrial civilization has now grown to this. ನಿಮಗೆ ಯಾವತ್ತಾದ್ರೂ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಲಿ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಓದಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಈ ಅಗ್ರಿಕಲ್ಚರ್ ಸಿವಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ್ ದೇರ್ ಎನಿ ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಾನ್ಕ್ಲೇವ್ ಟು ಟಾಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್? ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ದೇರ್ ವಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್. ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ದೇರ್. ಅಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ 350 years that we transformed ourselves from soil economics. ನಮ್ಮ ಅರ್ಥಶಾಸ್ತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸು, ಆ ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ನಿಂದ ಯಾರೋ ಕಳ್ತನ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಗೊಂಡು ಹೋದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಗ ಉಳಿದಿರೋದು ಆಯಿಲ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್. ಈ ಆಯಿಲ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಬಂದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಯು ಲುಕ್ ಎಟ್ ದ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ನೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಸ್ಪೀಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಇನ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ವಾಟ್? ಆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು ದ ಕೇವ್ ಏಜ್. ಹಂಗೆ ಯಂಗ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಾರ್ದು. ನಾವು ಈಗ ಸಂಪೋಷಿತ ವಿಕಾಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹಿಂದೂಸ್ತಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ರಾನಡೆ ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ರು. ಆವಾಗ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದ ಡಿಬೇಟ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಸ್ ಪಾವರ್ಟಿ, ಮಾಸ್ ಅನ್ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ವರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೆ ರಾನಡೆ and all other elite group who were trained in the Western thinking, they had opted for industrialization. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅನುಯಾಯಿ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ನೆಹರು ಅದೇ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ನೆಹರು ಈ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ವಿಚಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಒಪ್ಪಿಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ವಿ ವೆಂಟ್ ಆನ್ ಟು ದ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್. ಸೊ ಈಗಲೂ ನಾವು ಆ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿಲೇ ಇದೀವಿ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರ ಅವಾಗ ಅಂತ ಈಗ ಯಾಕೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಬರೀ ಒಂದು ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋಣ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ಸ್ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಲ್, ಇದು ಫಿಲಾಸಾಫಿಕಲಿ ನಾವು ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಇಸ್ ದಟ್ ಗಾಂಧೀಜಿ ನಮಗೆ ತಿಳಿಸಿದ್ರು ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಥಾಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಆಫ್ ಎಥಿಕ್ಸ್. ಅದು ನೀವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಎಥಿಕಲ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರೇಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಬರೀ ನಾವು ಅದು ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ಎಂಡ್ ಅಪ್ ಇನ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಅಂಥ ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮಿಕವಾಗಿ ಇದೀವಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾವು ಬರೀ ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮಿಕತಾನೇ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಮೋಕ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡಬೇಕು, ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಮುಮುಕ್ಷುಗಳೇ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು, ಈ ಲೌಕಿಕ ಏನು ನಡೀಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮೋಹನ್ ದಾಸ್ ಕರಮ್ಚಂದ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಈಸ್ ಎ ಶೆಟ್ಟಿ, is a banya. Let us remember, he cannot be impractical. Yakendre he says that something that is not viable is not economic, and then we can't talk about ethics. It may have ethics but no economics, it is of no use. Wise choice. He's a pragmatic person, and his pragmatism is taking us to an alternative which has a greater potential to make the societies more, or the humanity for that matter, sustainable, in the sense in which I have coined this word of samposhita. Samposhana andre enu? What is this samposhit? Why we are not calling? We have words in Gujarati, we call Chiras, Thai Vikas, Chiranjeevi Vikas, and all those words have come. But that says that whatever development is going on must be Chiras, Thai or Chiranjeevi. Gandhi is questioning that, and sustainable development goals continue to use the same thing, that our physical material levels of living can't come down. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಅಮೆರಿಕನ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ತರಬೇಕು, ಯುರೋಪಿಯನ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ತರಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಭಾವನೆನೇ ಇನ್ನ ಇದೆ. ಆ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ನೇ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಭಾವನೆ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಭಾವನೆ ಬರ್ದೇ ಇದ್ರೆ ಎಂಥ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ಸ್ ನೀವು ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೇನು, ಅದು ಇಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ ಹೋದ್ರೇನು ಅದು ಸಾಧ್ಯವಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಗಾಂಧಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರು he gave us an alternative. And Gandhi, fortunately, is not alone. We have actually not gone to the scholars who have worked on this, the minds that have applied, the models that have been built. Gandhi gave us constructive programs. What are his constructive programs? Those constructive, and he is not saying this now. 1916, for all the students who are more interested, I will recommend that they should read 3 lectures, important lectures by Mahatma Gandhi, given in 1916 after 1 year of silence, Gokhale enshrined silence. Then he started speaking. First, he spoke in Banaras Hindu University, where he really took on everybody and talked about the education system, that we should have our original education system. He then spoke to missionaries in Madras on Swadeshi, where he was saying that being Swadeshi is being religious, and it is not institutionalized religion that he was talking about. He was talking about the dharma of an individual and the association of this, how you should really bring in the village Swaraj, and from there it arose Gram Swaraj. So his key to sustainable development is Gram Swaraj, and that brings in decentralization. What are the tenets of this? There are 11 tenets given, and I should read them out for you. Gram Swaraj anta English allantu pustaka ide. Nandu ಒಂದು ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಸರ್, ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಈ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಆತ್ಮಕಥೆ ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡಿದೀವೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ ನನಗೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಗುಜರಾತಿಲಂತೂ ಇದೆ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಗಾಂಧೀಜಿ ಬರೆದಿದ್ದೆ ಗುಜರಾತಿ. ಅವರು ಹಿಂದ್ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಗುಜರಾತಿಲೇ ಬರೆದಿದ್ರು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಅನುವಾದಗಳಾಗಿದೆ. ನನ್ನ ಅಪೇಕ್ಷೆ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನ ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಮಗ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಓದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಟಿಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್ಲಿ ಪೇಪರ್ ಜರ್ನಲ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್, ಪಿಯರ್ ರಿವ್ಯೂಡ್ ಜರ್ನಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆಗೋಲ್ಲ. ಗಾಂಧಿಗೆ ಅದು ಬೇಕೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಏನು ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನೋ, ನನ್ನ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಹೆಂಗ್ ನಡ್ಕೋತೀನೋ ಅದೇ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಸೆಡ್ ಮೈ ಲೈಫ್ ಈಸ್ ಮೈ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಅಂತ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಜೀವನ ಹೆಂಗ್ ನಡೆಸ್ತೀನಿ, ನನ್ನ ಬಾಳ ಹೆಂಗ್ ನಾನು ನಡೆಸ್ತೀನಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಮೋಹನ್ ದಾಸ್ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ದಾನೆ. ಆ ಮೋಹನನ್ನ ನಾವು ಮರ್ತ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಗಾಂಧಿನ ಮಹಾತ್ಮ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂಥ ಮೋಹನ್ನು ನಮಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ. ಗ್ರಾಮ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ, ಯಾಕೆ ಗ್ರಾಮ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು 5,000 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಇದು ದುನಿಯಾ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಂಸಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿಟ್ಟಿದೀವಿ, ನೋಡಿ ನಾವ್ ಹಿಂಗ್ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ವಿ ಅಂತ. ಈಗ ನಮಗ್ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಕಷ್ಟನೂ ನಾವ್ ಯಾರೋ ಬೇರೆ ತೋರ್ಸಿರೋ ರಸ್ತೆಗೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೇನೇನೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮಾತು ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಹಂಗಂತ ನಾವು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಯುಗಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗ್ಬೇಕು, ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಇರಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತಲ್ಲ. Knowledge is independent quest of humanity, and it will continue. And we have to be open to this knowledge and innovation. All the knowledge that is growing, all the innovation that is happening, we are open. But that is science. We have to come and understand the technology. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಆ ವಿಷಯ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಈಗ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ. ಬಟ್ ಬಿಫೋರ್ ದಟ್ ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಟೆಲ್ ಯು, ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅವರಿಗೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ನ್ ಫುಲ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್. ನಾವು ಕೈ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕೆಲಸ ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ ಗುಜರಾತಿ ಹಿಂದಿಲಂತೂ ಇದೆ, ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ನಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಿಂದಿಲಿ ಹಂಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಮೇ ನಹಾ ಧೋಕೆ ಆತಾ ಹೂँ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಯಂಗ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಇಂಥ ಶಬ್ದಗಳು ಕೊಲೋಕ್ವಿಯಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ನಹಾ ಧೋಕೆ ಆತಾ ಹೂँ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ನಾನ ಮಾಡಿ, ಧೋವನು ಏನು, ಧೋಯೋದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು, ಶರೀರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ಟೆ. ನಾವು ಸ್ನಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ನೀವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ, ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸ್ನಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ್ಲೂ ನಮ್ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ನಮ್ ಪಾಡಿಗೆ ಒಕ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ಅದು ಕೆಲಸ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ನನ್ನ ಕೈ ಕೆಲಸ. ಮೈ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ವಾಸ್ ಬೀಂಗ್ ಟ್ರೈನ್ಡ್. ಈಗ ಏನ್ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಭಾಷೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಬರೀ ನಾನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ. ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಒಂದು ಶವರ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ವಾ, ಐ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಅ ಶವರ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕಮ್. ಆ ಶವರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಒಗೆಯೋದು ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಈಗ ವಾಷಿಂಗ್ ಮಷೀನ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ವಾಷಿಂಗ್ ಮಷೀನ್ ಬರಬಾರ್ದಾ? ಬರಬೇಕು. ಯಾಕೆ ಬರಬೇಕು? ಈಗ ಯಾಕೆ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಡ್ರಜರಿ ಇರೋ ಕಡೆ, ಕೈನಲ್ಲಿ ತಾಕತ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಬಟ್ಟೆಗಳು ಒಗಿತಾ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಕಡೆ ಅಂಥದ್ದು ಬೆಡ್ಶೀಟು ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಭಾರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಮಷೀನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಕ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ವಿವೇಕ ಬೇಕು, ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಒಂದು ವಿವೇಕ ಬೇಕು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಕೈಯಿಂದ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಫುಲ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಕೊಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ನನಗೊಂದು ನನ್ನ ಆಲೋಚನೆ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ದಟ್ಸ್ ಮೈ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಮಹಾತ್ಮ ಗಾಂಧಿ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ರೂರಲ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮಹಾತ್ಮ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹೆಸರು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ವಾಭಿಮಾನಕ್ಕೆ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಬಿನ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಹಿಟ್ ದ ಸ್ವಾಭಿಮಾನ ಆಫ್ ಅವರ್ಸ್. ಯಾಕೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ? ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ 100 days employment as a dole by the government. It is not dignified employment. ಮಣ್ಣು ಕೆದಿಯೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಾವು ಇದು ಮಹಾತ್ಮ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತೋದೇನೆ ತಪ್ಪು. ಸೊ ಹಿ ಟಾಕ್ಡ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಫುಲ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಅದರಲ್ಲೇನೆ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಡಿಗ್ನಿಟಿ. ಸೊ ಐ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಬ್ರೆಡ್ ಲೇಬರ್. ನೋಡಿ, ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಟ್ಟು ನೋಡಿ. ನನ್ನ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಬರಲ್ಲ, ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಬರೋರು, ನಾವು ಯಾಕೆ ಸರ್ ಖಾದಿ ಬಹಳ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಆಗಿದೆ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ. ನಾನು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ನಿಮಗೆ ಖಾದಿ ನೀವು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ತಾನೇ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಖಾದಿ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ, ನಾವೇ ಅದನ್ನ ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತ, ನೂಲ್ ಎಳೆಯೋಣ ಅಂತ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿಸಿ, ಸ್ಪಿನ್ನಿಂಗ್, ವೀವಿಂಗ್, ಡೈಯಿಂಗ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠದಲ್ಲೇ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳು, ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ದೇನೆ ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಧ ಗಂಟೆ ಸಾಕಪ್ಪ ನೀವು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಮುಕ್ಕಾಲು ಗಂಟೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ 15 meters ಆಫ್ ಕ್ಲಾತ್. ನಿಮ್ದು 3 dresses ರೆಡಿ ಆಗುತ್ತಪ್ಪ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟಿವಿಟಿ ಆನಂದ ಇರಲ್ವಾ? ಎಷ್ಟು ಆನಂದ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ. ನೀವು ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಎನರ್ಜಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಟೆಡ್. ಇಕಾಲಜಿಕಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ? ಯು ಆರ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ಫಾಸಿಲ್ ಫ್ಯೂಯಲ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಇಂದ ಆಯಿಲ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಈ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗಿರೋದು. ಸೊ ಹಿ ವಾಸ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಬ್ರೆಡ್ ಲೇಬರ್, ವರ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್, ಫುಲ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಹಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಈಕ್ವಿಟಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಸಮಾನತೆ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದು ಒಂದು ಗ್ರಾಮ ಸ್ವರಾಜ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಮುದ್ದೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಬೇರೆನೇ ತರ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಒಂದು ಫುಲ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಮೆಂಟ್ ದಟ್ ವೆನ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದಿ SDG ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಗೋಲ್ ಇನ್ ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಮೋಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಿಲಿಟಿ ತರಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯು ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎ ಆಟಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿ. ಇದು ನಂದಲ್ಲ, ತೇನ ತ್ಯಕ್ತೇನ ಭುಂಜಿತಾಹ. ಆ ಈಶಾವಾಸ್ಯ ಉಪನಿಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋದು ಎಲ್ಲಾನು ದೇವರದೇನೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಭೋಗಿಸೋವಾಗ ತೇನ ತ್ಯಕ್ತೇನ ಭುಂಜಿತ ಮಾ ಕಸ್ಯ ಸ್ವಿಧನಂ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಬೇರೆಯವರ ಸಂಪತ್ತಿ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಆಸೆ ಪಡಬಾರದು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮ್ಮ ಈಶಾವಾಸ್ಯ ಉಪನಿಷದಲ್ಲೇ ಇದೆ. ಆ ಮೆಸೇಜೇನೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದೇನೇ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್. ಅಷ್ಟರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಸರೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಗ್ರಾಮ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ಗೋಸ್ಕರನು ಆ ಭಾವನೆ ಯಾವಾಗಾದ್ರೂ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ತನ್ನ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರನು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಈ ಭಾವನೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಇದೊಂದು ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಫೀಚರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ನಾಟ್ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟ್. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಮಾತು ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಟೈಮ್ ಐ ಶುಡ್ ಸೇ. Professor, you just stop me when I have my time is up. I will also like to have some questions. I'll stop exactly at 12:30. I'll watch my time as well. But if I am not, you just raise hand and I'll stop.
I'll do that.
No problem. You know, the point I'm making is that this entire idea, if we have to understand about the decentralization, we have to understand that we have to understand trusteeship in that sense. And for that, he brought in Swadeshi. He is not a narrow-minded person. He is saying that for your, you see, roti, kapda or makan. ಊಟ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಮನೆಗೆ ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಆಸ್ಟ್ರೇಲಿಯಾದಿಂದ ತರಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾ? ನಾನು ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಆಸ್ಟ್ರೇಲಿಯಾದಿಂದ ಬಂತಪ್ಪ ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ತಿನ್ನೋಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ವೀಟು. ಅದೇ ಆ ಕಾಂಡ್ಲಾ ಪೋರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು ಹೆಂಗ ಕೆಂಪು ಬಣ್ಣದ್ದು ಬರ್ತಿತ್ತು ಇದು ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ. ಸೊ ಗೋಧಿ. ಸೊ ಅದು ನನಗಿನ್ನ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಆತ್ಮನಿರ್ಭರ್ ಭಾರತ್ ಅಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರೈಮ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ ಆತ್ಮನಿರ್ಭರ್ ಭಾರತ್ನ ಆತ್ಮನಿರ್ಭರ್ ಹಳ್ಳಿಯಿಂದ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಒನ್, he is talking about a unit where you can, the basic necessities of life has to be produced and consumed. That is mode of production and attitude to consumption. ಅದು ನೀವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇದು ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅಷ್ಟು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಆ ಸ್ವದೇಶಿ ಜೋಡೆ ಸ್ವಾವಲಂಬನ, ಅದೇ ಆತ್ಮನಿರ್ಭರತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಆತ್ಮನಿರ್ಭರತೆ ಹಂಗೇ ಬರೋದು. ನೀವು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಟ್ಟು ನೋಡಿ. ನಾನೀಗ ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿಲಿ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಹತ್ರ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಇರೋದು. ನಾನೀಗ ಮುಂಚೆ ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ಈಗ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದು ಟೌನ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ, ಧರಂಪುರ್ ಅಂತ. ಇದೊಂದು ಆದಿವಾಸಿ ಗಿರಿಜನಗಳ ಇಲಾಖೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. ನಮ್ಮ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳ ಜನಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ನಾನು ಈ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಾವು ನಮ್ದೇ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೋದಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಈ ಕೊರೋನಾ 19ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಕೇಳಿದೆ, ಈ ರೇಷನ್ ಶಾಪ್ ಇಂದ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ದೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಡೆಯೋದಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಹೌದು ಸರ್, ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ನಮ್ಮ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋರು. ಸಿಟಿಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಸಂಭವ ಆಗಿರೋದಾ? ನಾವು ಸಿಟಿ ಕಲ್ಚರ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ಅದು ಸಂಭವ ಆಗಿರೋದಾ? ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಇನ್ಎವಿಟೇಬಲ್. ಸಿಟಿಗಳು ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿವೆ, ಅದು ಇನ್ನ ದೊಡ್ಡದೇ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ ನಾವು? ಧಾರಾವಿ ಸ್ಲಮ್ ವಿಷಯ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಅಂಥ ಸ್ಲಮ್ಗಳು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು, ಮೈಸೂರು ಎಂಥ ಸುಂದರವಾದ ಶಹರ, ಅದು ಸಿಟಿ ಇತ್ತು, ಪಟ್ಟಣ ಇತ್ತು. ನೀವೇ ಹೇಳಿ, ನೀವು ನೋಡಿರೋರಲ್ಲ ಮೈಸೂರು. ನಾನು ನೋಡಿರೋದೇನಷ್ಟಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈ ಮೈಸೂರಿಗೂ ಏನು ಗತಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ? ವಿಶ್ವೇಶ್ವರಯ್ಯ ಯಾವಾಗಲಾದ್ರೂ ಹಂಗೆ ಕಲ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ರ ನಮ್ಮ ಇಷ್ಟು ಡರ್ಟಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ, ಹಿಂಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಕಲ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ರ? ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದೇರ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ದೀಸ್ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಗೋ ಇನ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಸ್ವಾವಲಂಬನ, ಸ್ವದೇಶಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಯೂನಿಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿನ ನಾವು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಜೊತೆ ನಮಗೆ ಕೋಆಪರೇಷನ್ ಬೇಕು. ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಮಾತ್ರ ಸರ್ವಧರ್ಮ ಸಂಭಾವನೂ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಈಗ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ಜಗಳದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಮಾತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಶ್ಲೋಕ ಹೇಳಿ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಅದು ಈಶಾವಾಸ್ಯ ಉಪನಿಷದ್ದಾನೆ. ಅದು ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಏನು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಎಷ್ಟು ಸರ್ವಾಣಿ ಧರ್ಮಾಣಿ ಆತ್ಮನ್ಯೇವ ಎಷ್ಟು ಸರ್ವಾಣಿ ಜೀವಾಣಿ ಆತ್ಮನ್ಯೇವ ಅನುಪಶ್ಯತಿ ಸರ್ವಭೂತೇಶು ಆತ್ಮಾನಂ ತಥೋ ನ ವಿಜುಗುಪ್ಸತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಈಶಾವಾಸ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿರೋದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಪ್ರತ್ಯೇಕ ಜೀವದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಪ್ರತ್ಯೇಕ ಆತ್ಮದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಪ್ರತ್ಯೇಕ ಆತ್ಮ ನನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಯಾರನ್ನಾದ್ರೂ ಹೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಮೆಸೇಜು ಇದು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಇದನ್ನ ಯಾಕೆ ನಾವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಈ ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ಮಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ಕೇನೆ ಜಗಳ ಆಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೇನೆ ಈ ಪ್ರಾಸ್ಪೆರಿಟಿಲಿ ನಮ್ ಶೇರ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ತರ. ಇದು ಕೊನೆ ಮಾತು ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಹಿಂಗ್ ಮಾತಾಡೋಕ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಏನ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಿ, ಏನ್ ಸರ್ ನೀವು ಯಾವ ಕಾಲದ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಿ, ಈಗೆಲ್ಲ ಸೈನ್ಸು ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ. ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಏನ್ ಈ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ವಾ? ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಸಮಾಜ ಒಪ್ಪಿಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಒಂದ್ ಪ್ಯಾಸೇಜ್ ನಾನು ಓದ್ತೀನಿ, ಅದ್ ನೀವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ, virtually all of the scientific understanding necessary for such a world, ಅಂದ್ರೆ such a world ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಮನುಷ್ಯ right scale ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. he is talking about scales. ಗಾಂಧೀಜಿ also talked about scale. industrialization ಅಂದ್ರೆ high scale ಅಂದ್ರೆ concentration of power. ಈಗ ಏನ್ ಜಗಳ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ, ಅಂಬಾಣಿ ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರ ಯಾರೋ ಜೀಪ್ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ರಂತೆಪ್ಪ, ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಭಯ. ಅಂಥ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಪವರ್ 20 ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯು ಬಿಲೀವ್? ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಈಕ್ವಿಟಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. 27 ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಮನುಷ್ಯನೋ ಇರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಯಾರೂ ಸತ್ಯಾಗ್ರಹ ಮಾಡೋಂಗಿಲ್ವಾ? ಹೇಗಪ್ಪ ನೀನು ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ನಿನಗೊಂದು 5 ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಬರೀ ಪಾರ್ಕಿಂಗೇ ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇರೋ 4 ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಗಾಡಿಗಳು ನೀನ್ ಬೇಕು, ನೀನ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಾ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ನೈತಿಕತೆ ಇದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಅದು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ನೀವು. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅದಕ್ಕೇನೆ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಅದ್ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಯಾವ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ನೋಡ್ತಿರೋ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗೈಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಈ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನೇನು ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಅದೇ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಸೈಟೇಷನ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ. ಈ ಮನುಷ್ಯನ ಹೆಸರು ಕರ್ಕ್ ಪ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಕ್ ಸೇಲ್ ಅಂತ, ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್. ಅವನು ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದಾನೆ. ಏನ್ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದಾನೆ ನೋಡಿ. There is general agreement in the scientific community that for most part we have all the ideas and theories that we need to construct any kind of technology we want, and that what now remains is the task of applying them. ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ, ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಧನವಂತಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಪವರ್ ವಿತ್ ನೆಕ್ಸಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪವರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಆನಂದ ಇದೆ. ನಾನು ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪಾರ್ಟೀಸ್. ಐ ಆಮ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್, ದ ಪವರ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್, ದ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಪವರ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್, irrespective of the party which rules. This is for the younger generation. Concentration of economic and political power is lethal, and it will lead only to a violent society. ಈ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ we have to break. ಈ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಮಾಡದೇ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಒಂದು ಹಾರ್ಮೋನಿಯಸ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗೋಕ್ ಸಾಧ್ಯವಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದನ್ನ ನೀವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ರೈಟ್ ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಆ ರೈಟ್ ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿನೂ ಇದೆ. ಈಗ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ 3D ಪ್ರಿಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಅದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಪಾಸಿಬಲ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಈಗ ಈ ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ಇದೆ, ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಇದೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಫೋನ್ ಇದೆ. ಯು ಆರ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಹೋಲ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ಡ್. ಎಲ್ಲರ ಹತ್ರನೂ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು. ಅದು ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದಾ? ನಾವು ಯಾವ ಸಿನೆ ತಾರೀಕೆ ಲಕ್ಷ ಸಾಬೂನ್ ಹಚ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾಳೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಆ ಲಕ್ಷ ಸಾಬೂನ್ ಹಚ್ಕೋಬೇಕು? ಇಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರ ನಾವು ಸೋಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆರಾಮಾಗಿ ಸೋಪ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಬಹಳ ಈಸಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ ಸೋಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಲಾಬಿನೂ ಇತ್ತು, ಮೋಗ್ರಾನು ಇತ್ತು, ಎಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಇದು ಸೆಂಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅದ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಲ್ಲ, ಅದೇನು ಅಷ್ಟು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆನ್ಸಿವ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವೇ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅಭಿಮಾನನೂ ಇತ್ತು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಅದು ನಡೀತು. ಸೊ ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್. ನೀವು ಹಂಗೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ನೀವು ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ನೇ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ಟು ಪೊಲ್ಯೂಟ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಪ್ಲಸ್ ವಿಸ್ಡಮ್ ಇನ್ ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್. ಕೊನೆ ಮಾತು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್ ನಾನು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಈಗ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಬನಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಲಿ ಮೆಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಭೌತಿಕ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಆತ್ಮ ವಿಕಾಸ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು. ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಆತ್ಮಿಕರು ತಾನೆ, ನಾವಂಥ ಅನಾತ್ಮಿಕರಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ತಾನೆ. ಅದು ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾರು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿರೋದು, ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಧರ್ಮಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಹೇಳಿರೋದು ಅದೇನೆ. ನಿಮ್ ಭೌತಿಕ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆಗಳು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ ಆನಂದ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಆತ್ಮಚಿಂತನೆ ಮತ್ತು ನಿಮಗೆ ಆತ್ಮಶೋಧನೆ ಸರೋಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಈ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ಗೆ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರಲ್ ಸ್ವರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ಡ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಸೊಸೈಟೀಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಈಗ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ಘರ್ಷಣೆಗಳ ವಿಷಯ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್. ನನಗೆ ಹೆಸರು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ನಾನು ರಿಜಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸ್ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಿನೇವಿಯನ್ ಕಂಟ್ರೀಸ್, ಸ್ವಿಟ್ಜರ್ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್, ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ ಸುಖವಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ? ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಲಿಮಿಟೆಡ್ ದೇರ್ ವಾಂಟ್ಸ್. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಇನ್ ಪೀಸ್. ನಾವು ಆ ಪೀಸಿಗೆ ಬರ್ಬೋದು ವಿತ್ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ. ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಹಂಗರ್ ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. ನಾವು ಹಂಗರ್ ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ, ಇದು ಪಾವರ್ಟಿ ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇಂಥದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಇಂಥ ಮಾಸ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಗಾಂಧಿ ನಮಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಅದು ನನ್ನ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಸ್ವರಾಜ ತಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏಕಾದಶ ವ್ರತ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಆ ಏಕಾದಶ ವ್ರತ ಈಗ ನಾನೇನು ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಯಮ ನಿಯಮಗಳು ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರನೂ ಇದೆ. ಸತ್ಯ, ಅಹಿಂಸಾ, ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಚರ್ಯ, ಪರಿಗ್ರಹ ಮತ್ತು ಅಸ್ತೇಯ ಮತ್ತು ಆಸ್ವಾದ ಮತ್ತು ಅಭಯ. ಆಮೇಲೆ 4 ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಲೆವೆನ್ಸ್ ಅವ್ರು ತಂದಿದ್ರು. ಸರ್ವಧರ್ಮ ಸಂಭಾವ, ಅಸ್ಪೃಶ್ಯತಾ ನಿವಾರಣೆ, ಸ್ವದೇಶಿ ಮತ್ತು ವರ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರು ತಂದ್ರು. ಆ ಸ್ವರಾಜಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಸಮಷ್ಟಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಾಡೋ ಸಮಾಜ. ಆ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ, ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಆಟೋಮೆಟಿಕ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸೈಮಲ್ಟೇನಿಯಸ್ ಈಕ್ವೇಶನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಕೃತಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೂ ನಮಗೊಂದು ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ರೆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಒನ್ಸ್ ಅಗೇನ್. ಸೊ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಸಮಷ್ಟಿ ಪ್ರಕೃತಿ ಸಂವಾದಿವಾಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು, ಹಾರ್ಮೋನಿಯಸ್ಲಿ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಂಥ ಹಾರ್ಮನಿಗೆ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಕೊಟ್ರೆ, ಆ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ತೋರಿಸಿರೋ ರಸ್ತೆಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆ ಕಡೆ ನಾನು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಡೆಯೋದು. ನಾನು ಪಟ್ಟಣ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ, ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನೋಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿಲ್ವಾ, ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವೇ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಯಾರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಯಾವಾಗ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇರಬಾರ್ದು. ನಾನೇ ನನಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಬಂದಾಗ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತಾ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಮುಂದುವರಿತೀನಿ. ಹಂಗಾದ್ರೆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ UN ನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಾನ್ಫರೆನ್ಸ್ಗಳು ಭಾಷಣ ಮಾಡದೇನೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳೂ ಅಂಥ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು. ಅದು ನಮ್ದು ನಾಗರಿಕ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ. ಆ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ನಾವು ವಹಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಅದೇ ನಾಗರಿಕ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಭಾವ. ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಯ್ತೀನಿ, ನಾನು ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಜಗಳ ಆಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅದಲ್ಲ. ನಾಗರಿಕ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರತೆ, ದಿ ಸಿಟಿಸನ್ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲಿಸಮ್ ಈಸ್ ಅಟ್ ದ ಕೋರ್ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಗಾಂಧೀಸ್ ಗ್ರಾಮ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ನಾನು ಈಗ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಿಲ್ತೀನಿ, ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳೇ ಬರಲಿ.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful talk. And I will just make a quick recap of what you have said. And Professor Sudarshan Iyengar has begun his talk with Samposhit Vikas, and he's also drawn our attention to how we have transformed from the soil economics to oil economics. And he also touches on how economics cannot be without ethics, and that is what Gandhi was actually stressing upon. And then he also talks about the constructive programs of Gandhi and his talk on education system and how Gram Swaraj is very crucial. And then for a decentralized, establishment of a decentralized space. Then he also, focuses on how knowledge in today's context is an independent quest of humanity, and also brings our attention to full employment is very much essential, and we should work with the hands. And he also draws our attention to the breaking of the concentration of political and economic power, and goes on to state that if one decentralizes production, one can reduce pollution. And he concludes his talk with an emphatic statement by stating that citizen nationalism is at the core of Gandhian thought. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful, insightful talk. And I'm sure the participants have questions. I invite the participants to ask questions. If you have any observations to make, any queries to Professor Sudarshan Iyengar. Is there anything in the box, Milan? Just check.
There are no questions, there are 2 comments.
Yeah.
3 comments now.
Sir, good afternoon. I am Kusuma from Hassan. I am the research scholar at the Department of English. Sir, I would like to observe the nice presentation by Professor Sudarshan Iyengar, sir. Sir, you have mentioned samashti, that is harmonious connectivity with the environment and also the people. And this collective group definitely comprises the minority and the majority section of the society. And when the majority are conscious about their role, and what about the minority who lack leadership and who lack the awareness also? And if that is the problem, how we can bring out this harmonious balance with the whole lot of collective people of the world? I just wanted to know from your side, sir.
दया धर्म का मूल है, देह मूल अभिमान, तुलसी दया न छांडिए, जब लगी घट में प्राण. Love force. Love force is the answer. Now, I mean, we have to, this is education. I missed out. One of the components in Gandhi's Gram Swaraj is education. Education has to come, and we have to be bold, and we have to tell every community. We are not talking about one side, we are talking about both the sides. ನೋವಾ ಖಲಿ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದೆಯಾ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ? ನೋವಾ ಖಲಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಓದಿ. ನೋವಾ ಖಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿತ್ತು? ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೈನಾರಿಟಿ ಹಿಂದೂಸ್ ಜೊತೆ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಅತ್ಯಾಚಾರ, ಅನ್ಯಾಯಕ್ಕೆ ಆ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಹೋದ್ರು, ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದ್ರು, ಆ ವಯಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಹೋದ್ರು, ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗೂ ಹೇಳೋಕೆ ನೀವು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ತಪ್ಪು ಅಂತ. We have to boldly say this. Anything that is violent, anything that is terrorizing, anything that is anti-human has to be firmly protested. ಸತ್ಯಾಗ್ರಹ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅದಕ್ಕೇನೆ. ಸತ್ಯಾಗ್ರಹ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಯೋರ್ ಟ್ರೂತ್ ವಿತ್ ಫರ್ಮ್ನೆಸ್. ನೋ ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ ಪೆಡ್ಲಿಂಗ್, no pampering, and no political, what is that called? Political sops. Adu maadabardu. Very clear. Why should we do that? Everybody is a citizen, and citizen must be treated equally. But no hatred and no violence. This is fundamental. Hatred creates only hatred. Violence creates counter-violence. It's only love which converts violence and hatred into love. This is very difficult to exercise, but this is the way out. So nobody is saying that you have to, do this kind of appeasement. If you are indicating that minority appeasement ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, minorities, tell minorities also. ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಆಗಲಿ, ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ನಾಗರಿಕಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಸಿವಿಕ್ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲಿಸಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ನನ್ನ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇಸ್ ಪ್ರೈಮರಿ. ಫ್ರೀಡಮ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಲೈಸೆನ್ಷಿಯಸ್. ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಬೇರೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕರೆಸಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಕೊಡ್ಬೋದು.
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
ನಾನೊಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದಾ?
ನೀವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು? ನೀವು ಕಾಮೆಂಟ್ ಹೇಳಿ. ನಿಮ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನನಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೇಷನ್ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಕಾಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡಿ. ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನೋ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಇಬ್ರು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ.
ಎಸ್ ನನ್ನ ಆಬ್ಸರ್ವೇಷನ್, ನಂದೊಂದು ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟೇಷನ್ ಇತ್ತು, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್, UN SDGs ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಟೀಕೆ ಮಾಡಿ, ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಈಗ ನಾವು ಗ್ಲೋಬಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೇವೆ, ಜಾಗತೀಕರಣದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಜಾಗತೀಕರಣ ಯಾವುದು ಜಾಗತೀಕರಣ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೆ, ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಗ್ಲೋಬಲೈಸ್ ದಿ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಇಕಾನಮಿ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಆ ಥರ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ, ಗ್ಲೋಬಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ನ್ಯೂಲಿಬರಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ಇಂದ ಇವತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಎದುರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಆ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ UN SDGs ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಸುಸ್ಥಿರ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡೋದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋದು ಸರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯುಮೆಂಟು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ವಿಚಾರ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಇಫ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಲುಕ್ ಎಟ್ ದಿ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಫಿಲಾಸಫಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಮಾಡೆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್, obviously capitalism is not going to give us answers. ನೀವು ಈಗ ಸ್ವದೇಶಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರಿ, ಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ economics ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. If that is to be located within the same capitalist paradigm of development, I think there are fundamental problems here. So ಯಾವ ತರದ economic philosophy ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್, that's a very very valid question. ಆಯ್ತು, ಅದು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಬಟ್ ಯು ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಗೋ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್ ಯಾಕೆ ತಂದ್ರು? ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಎವ್ರಿಬಡಿ ಕ್ಯಾನಾಟ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ವೆಲ್ತ್. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಇಂಟರ್ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಇನ್ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ಟು ಕಾಂಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್ ಟು ದಿಸ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ಲಿ ಅಫೇರ್ಸ್. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವರು ಟೀಚರ್, ಈಗ ನನ್ನ ಕೈನಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ಅದು ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದೇರ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಆನ್ ಆಂಟ್ರಪ್ರೆನ್ಯೂರ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಡಿಲಿವರ್. ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡಿ, ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಡಿಲಿವರ್. ಆ ಮಾಡೆಲ್ ನಮ್ದು ಹೊರಟೋಯ್ತು. ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಪವರ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪವರ್. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅನ್ಹೋಲಿ ನೆಕ್ಸಸ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೇನೆ ಇದಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲಿ ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್. ಈಗ ಅಮೆರಿಕಾ ಈಸ್ ಗಾಡ್ ಟು ಎವ್ರಿಬಡಿ. ವೈ? ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ನೆಕ್ಸಸ್ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ವರ್ಕಿಂಗ್. ಸೊ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಅಫೇರ್ಸ್ ನಡೆಸೋಕೆ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಏನೇ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳೋದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಎರಡು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ. ಒಂದು, ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ತಾನೇ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ರೈಸ್ ಆಗೋದು, ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಟೇಷನ್ ಬರೋದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಅದನ್ನ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, there would be levels where you will have to do some production at a higher level because such technology still they are available. ಈಗಂತೂ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಸೂಟ್ ಆಗೋ ಹಂಗೆ ಸೈಂಟಿಫಿಕ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸೈಂಟಿಸ್ಟ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿಸ್ಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಆವಾಗ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅಂಥ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರು ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗೂ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಬಜಾಜ್ಗೆ, ಬಿರ್ಲಾಗೆ, ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗೂ, ಟಾಟಾಗೆ, ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗೂ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಈಗ CSR ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಶಬ್ದ, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಎ ಫಾರ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಕಲ್ಚರ್. ನಮಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕಾ? ಕಾರ್ಪೊರೇಟ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ. ನೀವೆಲ್ಲಾ ಪಾಪಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಪುಣ್ಯನೂ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದೆ. ಅದು 2% ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಸಿ ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ಗೆ. ಆ ಭಾವನೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿಲಿ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನಾನೇ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾನ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೈಯರ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ, ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ನನ್ನ ಮೋಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಟೇಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿರಬಾರ್ದು. ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್, ನನಗೆ ಆನೆಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ ಅದು ಸೊಸೈಟಿಗೆನೆ ನಾನು ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಶಿಪ್ ಭಾವನೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅಂಥ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ಅನ್ನೋ, ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಹೇಳೋಕ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ನೀವು ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಮೋಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಮೋಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡರೇಷನ್ ತಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದೇ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಹಿಂಗ್ ನಾನು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೀನಿ, ಇದು ನನ್ನ ಅರ್ಥ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂಥ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಗಾಂಧಿನೇ ಸತ್ಯಾಗ್ರಹ ಕೂತ್ಬಿಡೋರು, ಅದು ಪಕ್ಕ. ಅವ್ರು ಹೋಗಿರೋರು. ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಅಷ್ಟು ದಮ್ ಈಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ತಾಕತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ ನೈತಿಕ ದಮ್ ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದೆ ಸರ್. ಇಲ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಹೋಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಬಾಣಿಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬಾರ್ದ? ನಾನಂತೂ ಒಂದು ಕಾಗದ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠದಿಂದ ಬರೆದಿದ್ದೆ. ಅವ್ರು ನನ್ಗೆ 2 ವಾಲ್ಯೂಮ್ ಕಳ್ಸಿದ್ರು. ಒಂದು ನೇಚರ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ವಾಲ್ಯೂಮ್ ಕಳ್ಸಿದ್ರು, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು 2 ನೇಚರ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಳ್ಸಿದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಗುಜರಾತಿಲೇ ಒಂದು ಕಾಗದ ಬರೆದೆ. ಗುಜರಾತಿಲಿ ಒಂದು 2, ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಪ್ರೋವರ್ಬ್ ಇನ್ ಗುಜರಾತಿ ಟ್ವೈಸ್, ದಾಯಿ ಸಾಸ್ರೆ ನಾ ಜಾಯ್ ಗಾಂಡಿನೇ ಶಿಖಾಮಣ ಪೇ ಅಂತ. ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರೋ ಇವಳು ನಮ್ಮ ಡಾಟರ್ ಇನ್ ಲಾ, ಎ ವೈಸ್ ಡಾಟರ್ ಇನ್ ಲಾ ಡಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಗೋ ಟು ಇನ್ ಲಾಸ್ ಹೌಸ್ ಬಟ್ ಅಡ್ವೈಸಸ್ ದಿ ಮ್ಯಾಡ್ ಡಾಟರ್ ಇನ್ ಲಾ ಟು ಡೂ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಗುಜರಾತಿ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ರಾಂಡ್ಯಾ ಪಚಿನು ಡಾಪಣ್, ದ ವಿಸ್ಡಮ್ ದಟ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ವಿಡೋಯಿಂಗ್. ಅಂಥದ್ದು 2 ಫ್ರೇಸ್ ಓದಿ ನಾನು ಮುಖೇಶ್ ಅಂಬಾಣಿ ಕಾಗದ ಬರ್ದೆ. ನೀವ್ ಈ ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು, ನೀವೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿದಿರಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗುಜರಾತ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂಥ ಸತ್ಯಾಗ್ರಹಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ರೆಡಿ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಗಾಂಧಿ ರೆಡಿ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಹಿ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲಿಸಮ್ ವಿತ್ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಪವರ್, but the way of production he understood that in economic affairs market is the best clearing agent. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅವ್ರು.
Thank you sir. Thank you
sir. There is also a general question here, one from Rajesh.
Direct
Yeah, you can ask question. Is that your question? Yes. Yeah, you can ask Professor Iyengar.
Sir, you mentioned Gandhi's theme of full employment, but right now the younger generation is facing the problem of unemployment. So I didn't understand. Please could you explain who is the exact responsible for this crucial situation in India?
ಇಂಥ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೆ there are two answers. One answer, if you ask a good economist, a very profound good economist professor, he will tell you that this is frictional unemployment, and therefore you have to ready yourself for the new skills, new technology, etc., etc. Therefore, we will have national skills organization, this, that, and we will promise you that everybody will be get employment in 10 years. For 10, 20 years, there will be some problem because this is frictional. ಆವಾಗ ನೀವು ಬದುಕ್ರಿ ಸತ್ರಿ ನಮ್ಗೇನು ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಲಾಂಗ್ ರನ್ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸರೋಗ್ತೀವಿ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಜವಾಬ್ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅಂತ ಜವಾಬ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಿಫರೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ, ನೀವು ನಾಳೆಯಿಂದ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ. ನಾನು ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ನಾನು ಆನೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಈ ಧರಂಪುರಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದ್ಮೇಲೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ನಾನು ಪಟ್ಟಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಹಮದಾಬಾದಲ್ಲೇ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೆ, ಬೇರೆ ಪಟ್ಟಣಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಗೋಧಿ ಅಕ್ಕಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ತಿಂತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ನಾನು ಇತ್ಯರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, 5 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ರಾಗಿ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾಗ್ಲಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ನಾನು ರಾಗಿ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿರೋ ಭತ್ತ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಅಕ್ಕಿ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಏನೇನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೋ ಅದು ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನನ್ನ ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತರಕಾರಿನೂ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಗ್ರೋ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಾನದು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನನಗೇ ಒಂದು ಸಂತೋಷ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಸೀದಾ ನನ್ನ ರೈತನಿಗೇನೆ ನಾನು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಲ್ವ. ಅವನ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಪ್ಪ, ನೀನ್ ಮಾರಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಂಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ದುಡ್ಡು ಬರುತ್ತಪ್ಪ, ತಗೋ, ನನ್ನಿಂದ ತಗೋ. ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ವಾ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್? ನಾನ್ ಸೀದಾ ರೈತನಿಗೆ ತಂದು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ಮ ರೈತ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ವಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ MSP ಬೇಕು, ಅವ್ನು ಹೋಗಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ವಲ್ಲ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ, ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಯೂತ್ ಹಂಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ. ಹಂಗೇನೆ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ವಿಷಯ, ನನ್ನ ಪಡೋಸಿ ಹತ್ರ ಇರೋ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ನೈತಿಕ ಧರ್ಮ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಒಪ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಬೇರೆ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಇಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಎಥಿಕ್ಸ್. ಅದು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೆಲಸ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಸಿಗೋಲ್ಲ? ಇಲ್ಲದೇ ಇದ್ರೆ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ, ಈ ರೈತರದು ಇದೇ ಆಗೋದು. ಎಲ್ಲಾ ರೈತರು ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವರೆಲ್ಲ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ as an economist, I can tell you there will be backward integration. Every farmer will be wiped off. 5% people will remain in rural. ಅದೇ ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಏಮ್. ಯಾವ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆದ್ರೂ ಬರ್ಲಿ, only 5% population should be there in villages. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಪಟ್ಟಣಗಳಿಗೆ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡಿ, ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಬದುಕಿ ಸಾಯಿರಿ, ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ, ಒಂದ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಮಾರ್ಜಿನಲೈಸ್ಡ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಏನು ಚಿಂತೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ತಿನ್ನೋಕಿದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ, ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ, ರೇಷನ್ ಶಾಪ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆಯೋ, ಇನ್ನೇನು ನಿಮಗ್ ಬೇಕು, ಸುಮ್ನೆ ಇರಿ. ಬಟ್ಟೆನೂ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ರೇಷನ್ ಶಾಪ್ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಟಾಕ್ ಆತ್ಮ ಸ್ವಾಭಿಮಾನ ಏನು ಬೇಡ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ನೀವೇ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಯಂಗ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಇದು ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ. ನೀವು ನೋಡಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಸಿಟಿನಲ್ಲೂ ಸಂಭವ, ಬರೀ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಅಂತಲ್ಲ, ಪಟ್ಟಣಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಸಂಭವ. ಬಟ್ ಅರ್ಬನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್. ಅದು ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಆ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಯಾವ್ದೋ ಯಾರನ್ನೋ ಒಪ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ನಾನು ವೈಸ್ ಚಾನ್ಸಲರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆಪ್ಪ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು 10 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ. ನಾನು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಕೊಂಡೆ ಹೋಗಿ. ಅದು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಪಾಪ ಅವಾಗ UGC ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರೇ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು 10 ವರ್ಷ ಅಂತ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೆ ತಗಲಾಕಿದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಎಂಥ ಗ್ರಾಸ್ ಎನ್ರೋಲ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ರೇಷಿಯೋಪ ಇದು. ಯಾಕೆ ಬೇಕು? ನಾನು ಇಂಥ BA BComಗಳು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಏನು ಕೆಲಸ? ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಜಸ್ಥಾನದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಇದು ಒಬ್ಬ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಓಲ್ಡ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ನನಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದ. ಅದ್ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥವಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಹಿಂದಿಲೇ ಗುಜರಾತಿಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ನಿನ್ ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನ ಸ್ಕೂಲಿಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವೇನೋ ಅಂತ. ನನಗೆ 28 ವರ್ಷ, ಅವಾಗ ಬಹಳ ಹೆಮ್ಮೆ PhD ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವನು ನನಗೆ ಜವಾಬ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ, ಇನ್ನಂಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಓದಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ನಾನು? ಅವನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಓದಿದ್ರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಓದಿದ್ರೆ ಹಳ್ಳಿನೇ ಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಓದ್ಸಲ್ಲ. ವೆರಿ ವೈಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಬರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ. ಅವನು ಏನೋ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ, ಜಮೀನಿತ್ತು, ಜಮೀನ್ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ ಏನು ಇದೇ ಇತ್ತೋ, ಎಮ್ಮೆನೋ ಹಸುನೋ ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಬೋದಲ್ವಾ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ ಎಜುಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವನು ಹೊಸ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಆಲ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ನಾಲೆಜ್ ಇಕಾನಮಿ. ಈಗ ನಾವು ನಾಲೆಜ್ ಇಕಾನಮಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಅಂಥದ್ದು ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಸರೋಗುತ್ತಪ್ಪ. ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಯಾವ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟು ನಿಮಗೆ ಏನ್ ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿ ಕೊಟ್ರೇನು, ಏನ್ ಪ್ರಾಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೇನು ಒಪ್ಪಬೇಡಿ. ನೋ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು ಗಿವ್ ಯು ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಎಂಥ ಸ್ಟೇಟು ಕೊಡಕ್ ಸಂಭವವಿಲ್ಲ. ಆನ್ ದ ಕಾಂಟ್ರರಿ, government jobs are going to further reduce. Employment in private sector because of automation will still reduce. You will have to become what Alvin Toffler called prosumers. Producers and consumers both. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿರೋದು ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟು ಇದೆ, ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇದೆ. ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇನ್ 2 cents ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಕೂತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸರ್ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಡಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ, ನನಗೆ ಬರೋಲ್ಲ ಅಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷು ಬರೋಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ನಾನು ನೋಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು ಅನ್ನೋದು, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಸಸ್ಟೈನ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ. ಆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನೆನ್ಸ್ ಬರೋದು ಹೀಗೆ. ನನ್ನ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್. ಇದಕ್ ಮೇಲೆ ನೀವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ. ನೀವು ಯಂಗ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ತಾನೆ, ನಾನು ಬರೀ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟೆ. ನಮ್ಗೆ ಏನ್ ಈ ಮುದುಕರು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಇದು ರಸ್ತೆಪ್ಪ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನ್ ನಡೆದ್ ನೋಡಿದೀನಿ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇದು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಕಾಣಿಸುತ್ತೆ, ನೀವು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೋಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದಾರೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಅದನ್ನ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಿ. ಯಾರ ಹತ್ರನೂ ಮ್ಯಾಜಿಕ್ ವ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಹಿಂಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆಗೋಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ನಾವೇ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. 30 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ನಾನು ಬೂಟ್ಸ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ. 30 ಅಲ್ಲ, ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗೋಯ್ತು. ಕಾಲೇಜ್ಗೆ ಹೋದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಬೂಟ್ಸೇ ಹಾಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ, ಚಪ್ಪಲಿ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಓಡಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀನಿ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆನೂ ಹೋಗಿ ಬಂದೆ, ಯಾರು ನನ್ ಕಾಲ್ ಕಡೆ ನೋಡ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇವ್ನು ಯಾರಪ್ಪ, ಇವನು ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ವೈಸ್ ಚಾನ್ಸಲರ್. ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಟಾಫ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ನೋಡೋರು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಚಪ್ಪಲಿ ಬೆಚ್ಚ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗೋದಲ್ವಾ. ಅರೇ ಸರ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ನೀವು ಸ್ಲೀಪರ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಿರಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ದಿಲ್ಲ, ನನ್ನನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ನನ್ನ ಸ್ಲೀಪರ್ ನೋಡ್ತಾರ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ತೆ ಅಷ್ಟು. ನಾವು ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ನನ್ಗನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನೊಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯನ್ನು ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದಾ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶೇಷಾದ್ರಿ? ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಮೀರಾ. ನಾನು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಮೀರಾ, ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಿಂದ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಸಹ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಾಗಿ. ಪರಿಚಯ ಇದೆ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಶೇಷಾದ್ರಿ. ತುಂಬಾ ಜನ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ. ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣವಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಏನೋ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣವನ್ನ ನೀವು ಏರ್ಪಡಿಸಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ಅಂಡ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಟು ಸುದರ್ಶನ್ ಜಿ. ಬಹಳ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಐ ಹರ್ಡ್ ಯು ಒನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಬರೋಡಾ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಎಗೋ, ತುಂಬಾ ಹಿಂದೆ. ನಾನು ವಿಕ್ರಮ್ ಸಾರಾಭಾಯಿ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಚಯ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಬಟ್ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಮೆನಿ ಇಯರ್ಸ್ ಎಗೋ. ನಾನಾಗ UN ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ. ಈಗ ಈ ಒಂದು ಇದು ವಿಚಾರ ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿದೆ. ನೆನೆ ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಕೇಳಿದೆ. ಉಳಿದ ಎಲ್ರು ಮೊದ್ಲಿಂದ ನಾನು ನಿಧಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಗುಟ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಕಿವಿಲ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬೇರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಜೊತೆಗೆ. ಕುಡೋಸ್ ಟು ದಿ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸರ್ಸ್, ಗಾಂಧಿಯನ್ ಸ್ಟಡೀಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಇವರು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆನಡಿಯನ್ ಸ್ಟಡೀಸ್ ಅವರು. ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ನೆನ್ನೆ ಪ್ರಾಚಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ದಾಗ್ಲೂ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ನನಗೆ ಹಲವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳಿದೆ. ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳಿತ್ತು. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ನನ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಸುದರ್ಶನ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ಸಿದ್ದು, ಅಥವಾ ಕೇಳೋದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಅವರ ವಿಚಾರ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ನನ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಚಿಂತೆಗೆ ಅಥವಾ ಯೋಚನೆಗೆ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂತದ್ದು ಒಂದು ವಿಷಯ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೀತಾ ಇರುವಂತ ಈ ಅದರಿಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಈಗಾಗ್ಲೇ ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಇವ ಯಾರವ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಾಗ ಇವ ನಮ್ಮವನ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭ, ಇವಳೆ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳುವಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭ. ಕುಸುಮಾ ಅವ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು. ನನಗೆ ಅದು ಬಹಳ ಅನುಸೂಚಿತ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸ್ತು. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತ ಈಗಾಗ್ಲೇ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಭೇದಗಳ, ತಾರತಮ್ಯಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯೆ, ಪಕ್ಷಪಾತಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಲಿಂಗ ಸಮಾನತೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ದಮನಿತ ಧ್ವನಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಡುವ ಗೌರವ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವಕ್ಕೆ ಅಪಾಯ ಅನ್ನೋ ತರದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ ಈಗಿನ ಸಂದರ್ಭ. ಸೊ ಅದರಿಂಗನ್ನ ಗಾಂಧೀಜಿಯವರು ಬಹಳ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಸತ್ಯದ ಎರಡು ಗೋಲ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಡೀತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ತಮಗೆ ಏನನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ, ನಾವು ಹೇಗೆ ಇದನ್ನ ದಾಟಿ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರೋದು? ನೀವ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ ಬಹಳ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್ ಆಗಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಸತ್ಯಾಗ್ರಹ ಖಂಡಿತವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಅಂತ. ಅದಲ್ಲದೆ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಈ ನಾವು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಕುಟುಂಬಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳ ಮೇಲಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಅಭದ್ರವಾದಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭಗಳು ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ, ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅವರು ಈಗ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಯಾವ ದಿಕ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ದಾರಿ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು, ಹೇಗ್ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನಗೆ ಆಗಾಗ ಕಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾನು ಹುಡುಕ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ವಿಷಯ. ಸೊ ತಾವು ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಈವನ್ ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸೇರ್ಸಿದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ನಂಗೆ ಐ ರಿಯಲಿ ಆಮ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ನ್ಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಹಿಯರ್ ಹೌ ಡು ವಿ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ದಿಸ್ ಅದರಿಂಗ್ and how do we strengthen the voices of the concerned, how do we network in a more effective way in the present context. Thank you and kudos to, in fact I wish ideas was also involved in this process because navella paಠ ಮಾಡೋ ವಿಷಯಗಳು ಇದು. ತುಂಬಾ ಸಂತೋಷ ನೀವು ಏರ್ಪಡಿಸಿರೋದು. ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಶೇಖರ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಶೇಷಾದ್ರಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
ಸರ್ ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್. ಹಲೋ ಸರ್ ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್.
No, one minute. Sir, would you like to respond?
Hello.
Yeah.
ಸರ್ ಈಗ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನ ಮಂಡನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ, ಬಹಳ ಖುಷಿ ಅನಿಸ್ತು. ವಿಷಯ ಬಹಳ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ನಾಲೆಜಬಲ್ ಇದೆ. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರಾಮಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಮುಂಡರ್ಗಿ. ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಸರ್.
ಕೇಳಿ.
ಇವತ್ತು ಬಂಡವಾಳಶಾಹಿಗಳಿಂದ ಗಾಂಧಿ ತತ್ವವನ್ನ ರಕ್ಷಣೆ ಮಾಡಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ?
ಎರಡು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನಾನು ಉತ್ತರಿಸ್ತೀನಿ.
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್.
Let us take Ramapaji's question first.
Yes.
Gandhi needs no defense. ರಾಮಪ್ಪನವರು ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ.
ಎಸ್ ಓಕೆ.
ನಮ್ ಫೇಲ್ಯೂರ್ ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮಗಂಗ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ನಾವು ಗಾಂಧಿ ಡಿಫೆಂಡ್ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅಂತ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅವರು ಪೂರಾ ಜೀವನನೇ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊರಟೋದ್ರು. ಅವರು ರಸ್ತೆ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರು, ಆ ರಸ್ತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನಡಿಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಇದು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಗಾಂಧಿ ವಿಚಾರದವರು ನಿಮಗೆ ನಾವು ಅಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಆಗೋಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನಕ್ಕೇನೆ ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅವ್ರು ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರು ಆ ರಸ್ತೆಗೆ ನಾವು ನಡೆಯೋದು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಹಂಗೆ ನಮ್ದು ಒಂದು ಗುಟ್ಟಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇದೆ, ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹೆಸರೇ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಲ್ಲ. ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಯಂಗ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಕೆಲಸನೇ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಹೆಸರು ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು? ನಾನ್ ಗಾಂಧಿನೋನು, ನಾನ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಅನ್ನೋನೆಲ್ಲ ಮರ್ತು ಬಿಡಿ. ಆ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಸತ್ವ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ಸ್ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಅವ್ರು ನಡೆದ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ರು ನಾವು ನಡೆಯೋಣ, ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡೋಣ, ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಥ ಪ್ರಸಂಗಗಳು ಬರುತ್ತವೆ, ಆದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಅವಾಗ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಾವ ಕೊಡೋಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಾವ ಕೊಡೋಕೆ ನಮ್ದು ತಯಾರಿ ಏನು? ನಾವು ಅವರ್ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್. ಅದು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ, ಅದಾದ್ರೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನಗೊಂದು ಅನುಭೂತಿ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಬಹಳ ಬಹಳ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆದ್ರೆ ಅನುಭೂತಿ ಆಗಿದೆ. ನಾನು ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಜನಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಇವ್ರು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ,
मीरा
सिस्टर मीरा बेन.
आप आपने कैमोन अचीन, it's so nice.
Gandhi ji is Meera Ben.
Oh yeah, very much.
Your question, Meera Ben, is a tough one. Is a difficult situation we are passing. It's a very difficult situation. The otherness, the otherness actually comes from self-centeredness. ಈಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, we are all self-centered, and this self-centeredness has two origins. The Western concept of licentious freedom of myself is one, and two, the use of this licentious freedom to improve only my material well-being. I'm focused on that. If I understood my Shastra very well, if somebody is going to quote Shastra, quoting scriptures, our scriptures, I told you very clearly. I gave you Ishavasya Upanishadam shloka. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati. Please remember, this shloka is enough. No, Shastra doesn't talk about anything at all. It talks about the equality of the jiva. And therefore, it is our failure at individual level. ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಅಂತ ತಂದ್ರು. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ತಂದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, he brought 3 things. ಆ ನೈ ತಾಲೀಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿತ್ತು? ಒಂದು ಚರಿತ್ರ, ಹಿಂದ್ ಸ್ವರಾಜಲ್ಲಿ ಆಲ್ಡಸ್ ಹಕ್ಸ್ಲಿನ್ ಕೋಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನು ಕೋಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಹಿ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಸೆಡ್ ದಟ್ ಹಿ ರೆಟಿಫೈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹಿ ಹಸ್ ಸೆಡ್. ಚರಿತ್ರ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಈ ನ್ಯೂ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ 2020 ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಈ ಚರಿತ್ರ? ಈ ಸಂಬಡಿ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್? ನೋ. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ತರ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ, ನಮ್ ಡೇ ಟು ಡೇ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ನೈ ತಾಲೀಮ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಇದ್ದು ಜೊತೆಲಿ ಜೀವನ ಬಾಳ ನಡೆಸಿದ್ರೇನೆ ನನಗೆ ಆ ಪ್ರೇಮ್ ಭಾವ ಬರೋದು, ಸಹಿಷ್ಣುತೆ ಬರೋದು ಅಂತ. ಏನ್ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ನಮ್ಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಅದು ನಿಮಗ್ ಒಂದ್ ಮಾತು ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ನಾವ್ ಯಾವ ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಕಚ್ಚಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಬೆಳೆದಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಂತ. ನಮ್ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಿಂಧಿ ಆಗಿದ್ರು. ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಸಿಂಧಿ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟ್, ಮೈತ್ರಿ ಮಂಡಲ್ ಅಂತ. ನಮ್ಮ ದಾದಾ ದುಖಾಯಲ್ ನಮ್ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿ ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಒಂದು ನಮ್ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಒಂದು ಗೀತೆ, ಜಯ ಜಗತ್ ಪುಕಾರೆಜ, ದಾದಾ ದುಖಾಯಲ್ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ರು. ಅವ್ರು ನಮಗ್ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿ. ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಪಾಕಿಸ್ತಾನದಿಂದ ರೆಫ್ಯೂಜಿಯಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರೋರೆಲ್ಲ ಗಾಂಧಿಲ್ ವಿಶ್ವಾಸ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಈ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆ 11 ವರ್ಷ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಯಾರೂ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಮ್ಸ್ ಕೆಟ್ಟೋರು, ಮುಸ್ಲಿಮ್ಸ್ ನಾವು ಗೃಹಣೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ದಿವಸ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಏನೂ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ಟೀಚರು ನನಗದು ಹೇಳಿಲ್ಲ. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಆಯ್ತು, ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರೇಮ್ ಭಾವ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ನಡಿಬೇಕು. ಕಚ್ಚಲ್ಲಿ ಕಮ್ಯುನಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಆಗೋಲ್ಲ. ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಬಾರ್ಡರ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇದೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಹೇಳ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಿಂಧಿಗಳು ಯಾವ ಜಾತಿನವರಾದ್ರೇನು ನಮಗ್ ಚಿಕ್ಕನ್ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ನಮಗ್ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ತೆಗೆದ್ರೆ ಅಮ್ಮ ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಅಮ್ಮ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ತೆಗೆದ್ರೆ ಆಚೆ ನಮಗ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಹಂಗೆ ನಡೆಯುವಾಗ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇದಾದ್ರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ ಮನೇಲೆ ನಡೆಯುವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಏನಾದ್ರು ತಗಲಿದ್ರೆ ಅಮ್ಮ ಇಲ್ಲ ರಾಮ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಸಿಂಧಿಗಳು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರ ಗೊತ್ತಾ? ಈಗೇನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಿಂಧಿಗಳು ಹೇಳೋರು ಅಲ್ಲಾ ಅನ್ನೋರು. ಅಲ್ಲಾ ಯಾಕೆ ಹೆಸರು ಬರ್ಬೇಕಪ್ಪ ಅವ್ರ ಬಾಯಲ್ಲಿ? ಬಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಾ ವಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಅಲ್ಲ. It was that God. It was the name of the God, irrespective of the religion. ನಾನ್ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಪಾಪ ಮುದುಕಿನ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮರ್ಯಾದೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಹೋಗಿದ್ರೆ ನನಗೇನ್ ಹೇಳೋಲ್ಲ ಚಿಕ್ಕಂದ್ರೆ ಲಕ್ಕ ಲಾನತ್ತ ಮೂವತ್ತೊಕೆ. ಆ ಲಾನತ್ ಕಳ್ಸೋಡು, ಲಾನತ್ ನಮ್ ಕಲ್ಚರಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾನತ್ ಇಲ್ಲಮ್ಮ. ಅಂತ ಹಿಂದೂ ಕಲ್ಚರಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾನತ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅರ್ಥವಾಯ್ತಾ? ಇದು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹಿಂದಿಲಿ ಹೇಳೋದು ಗಂಗಾ ಜಮ್ನಿ ತೆಹಜೀಬ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ದು ಅಂಥದ್ದು ಫ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಆ ಫ್ಯೂಷನ್ ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಫೋರ್ಸಸ್, ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಫೋರ್ಸಸ್ ವಿಚ್ ಆರ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಆನ್ ಬೋತ್ ಸೈಡ್ಸ್. ಅದು ಬರೋದೇನೆ ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಪೋಲರೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ, ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಬುದ್ಧಿಗೆ ನೀವು ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ, ದೊಡ್ಡೋರಾದ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೋಯಾ ಪೇಡ್ ಬಬೂಲ್ ಕಾ ಆಮ್ ಕಹಾ ಸೆ ಪಾಯ್, ಎಂಡ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಸ್ ದ ಮೀನ್ಸ್. ನೀವು ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಏನ್ ಹಾಕ್ತಿರೋ ಅದೇ ಎಂಡ್ ಬರೋದು. ಈಗ ನಮಗ್ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಕಷ್ಟ ಇಷ್ಟು. ನಾವು ಗಾಂಧಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಪ್ಯಾರೆಂಟಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಮನುಷ್ಯತೆನೇ ಸರ್ವೋಪರಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಾವು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವ್ಯವಹಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ತಂದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರಬೇಕು. ಅದೇ ಥರಾನೇ ಜೆಂಡರ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂನು ಹಂಗೆ ಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅದೇ ಥರಾನೇ ಜಾತಿ ಇಶ್ಯೂನು ಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅದು ನಾವು ಬಿಹೇವಿಯರ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಇಂದಲೇ ಬರೋದು. ಅದು ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಕ್ಕಂದಿಂದ ಮನೆಯಿಂದಲೇ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಮನೆಯಿಂದಲೇ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಮನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾತಾಡೋದು? ಅವ್ರು ಹಿಂಗೆ, ಯಾರವ್ರು? ಅವ್ರು ಹಿಂಗೇನೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಗೇನೆ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಹಿಂಗೇನೆ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ನಂಬೇಡ ನೀನು. ಅವ್ರು ಸುಳ್ಳೇ ಹೇಳೋದು, ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಸುಳ್ಳೇ ಹೇಳೋದು. ಪಿಕೆ ನೋಡಿದಿರಾ? ಪಿಕೆ ಮುಸಲ್ಮಾನ್ ಹಮೇಶಾ ಧೋಖಾ ದೇತಾ ಹೈ. ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ ತೋರಿಸಿರೋದು? ಇದು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರೇನ್ ವಾಶ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಆ ಬ್ರೇನ್ ವಾಶ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಪೂರಾ ಜೀವನ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಟ್ಟ ಮನುಷ್ಯ. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಇದೇ ನನಗ್ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋ ಹಂಗೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾವು ಶಿಬಿರಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ಸ್. ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ಸ್. ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ಸ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ. ದ ಲವ್ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ದ ವಂಡರ್ಫುಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ಸ್. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಗೇಮ್ಸ್. ನಾವು ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಡೈನಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗೇಮ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಒನ್ಸ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಕ್ಲೂಡೆಡ್, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ದುಃಖ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲೇನೆ. ಯಾರನ್ನಾದ್ರೂ ನೀವು ತಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೊರಗೆ ಕಳಿಸಿ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿ ಒಂದು ಆಟ ಆಡಿಸಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ. ನೀವು ಹೇಗಾದ್ರೂ ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದ್ ಮಗುನ್ ತಳ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ತಳಿಸ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆ ಮಗು ಮನ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಯ್ತು, ಹೆಂಗ್ ನೋವಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕೇಳಿ. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಬೈನ್ಡ್ ಗೇಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾವನೆ ಆನ್ ದ ಇಮೋಷನಲ್ ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಬಂದಾಗ ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಹಂಗ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಅದು ನನ್ನ ಅನುಭವ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
We have one more question, sir. The last question by Professor Chandrakiran.
Sure, sir. You are so generous with time. Thank you.
Sir, namaste, sir.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಅಪ್ಪ, ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಹೇಳಿ.
ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತನ್ನ ಕೇಳಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಂತೋಷ ಆಯ್ತು. ಸರ್, ನಾನು ಇದನ್ನ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳ ಬಗೆಗೆ ತಾವು ತುಂಬಾ ಪ್ರಸ್ತಾಪ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ. ವರ್ತಮಾನದ ಸಂಕಟಗಳನ್ನ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಗಾಂಧಿಯ ತತ್ವಗಳನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜ ಯಾವ ಸೋಲಿನ ಹಂತಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಂಡೊಯ್ದಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಬೇಸರ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಾತಿನ ಓಗದಲ್ಲಿತ್ತು, ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸಿದ್ವಿ. ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳು ಸರ್, ಈಗ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಉದಾಹರಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಬಾರ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಸರ್. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳು ವಿಪರೀತವಾದಂತ ನಗರೀಕರಣಕ್ಕೆ ಒಳಗಾಗಿ ಅವು ತಮ್ಮ ಮೂಲ ಸ್ವರೂಪವನ್ನು ಕಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತಿರುವಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಆತ್ಮನಿರ್ಭರವನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಗುಡಿ ಕೈಗಾರಿಕೆಯನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬೇಸಾಯವನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಮಾಡೋದು ಹೇಗೆ?
ಬಹಳ ಸುಲಭ ಅಲ್ಲ. ನೀವು ಕೇಳಿರೋ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ, ನಿಮ್ದು ಕಾಮೆಂಟ್ ಎರಡೂನು ರೆಲೆವೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಈಗ ನಿಜಾನೇ, ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿರೋದು ನಿಜಾನೇ. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ನನಗೆ ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಈಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋ ಯುವಗಳಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ನಾನೇನ್ ಹೇಳಿ, ನೀವು ಜೀನ್ಸ್ ಹಾಕೋಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನೀವು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳು ಬರುತ್ತವೆ ಪಾಪ, ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು. ಈ ಇಂಟೀರಿಯರ್ ವಿಲೇಜಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಕಲ್ಪನೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ನಮ್ಮ ಏನಂತಾರೆ, ಬ್ಯೂಟಿ ಪಾರ್ಲರ್ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ, ಬ್ಯೂಟಿ ಪಾರ್ಲರ್ಸ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಹೇಳೋಕೋದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ? ಓಹೋ, ಬಹಳ ಹುಷಾರಪ್ಪ ನೀನು ಪಟ್ಟಣದಲ್ಲಿದ್ದು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಮಜಾ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಈಗ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ಯಾ, ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಸ್ವಾಭಾವಿಕ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಉತ್ತರನೂ ಇದೆ. ನಾನು ಬಹಳ ಆನೆಸ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ ಪ್ರಾಮಾಣಿಕವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು, ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿರೋದು ಎಲ್ಲ ತಪ್ಪಪ್ಪ, ಹಂಗೆ ನಾವು ಈ ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಥ ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತನೂ ನಡಿಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ನಡಿಬೇಕು. ನಮ್ಮ ಮೀರಾಬೆನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೂ ಅದು ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ನಮಗೆ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ಪಶ್ಚಾತ್ತಾಪ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತ ಇಲ್ಲವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ನಮಗೆ ಸ್ವೀಕೃತಿನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆ ನಾನು ಮೂರ್ ಶಬ್ದ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದು ನನ್ ಮೋಹನ್ನಿಂದಲೇ ನಾನು ತಗೊಂಡಿರೋದು. ಅವನ ಅಪ್ಪನ ಕಾಗದ ಬರ್ದ ಕಳ್ತನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅವಾಗ ಹೇಳ್ದ, ನಾನ್ ಕಳ್ತನ ಮಾಡಿದೀನಿ, ಅದು ಸ್ವೀಕೃತಿ. ನನಗ್ ಬಹಳ ಪಶ್ಚಾತ್ತಾಪ ಇದೆ, ನಾನು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಇನ್ಮೇಲೆ ಕಳ್ತನ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಪಶ್ಚಾತ್ತಾಪ. ಆದ್ರೆ ನಾನ್ ಮಾಡಿರುವ ತಪ್ಪು ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನನಗೊಂದು ಪನಿಷ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸಿಗಬೇಕು, ಅದು ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ ನನಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತ ಅನ್ನೋದು, ಅದು ಮೂರು ವಸ್ತುಗಳು ನಾವು ಮರ್ತು ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಆ ಮೋಹನಗ್ ಆವಾಗ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇತ್ತು, ಅವನ್ ಚೌರಲ್ಲೂ ಅದೇ ಮಾಡ್ದ. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪಶ್ಚಾತ್ತಾಪ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅಹಿಂಸೆ ಬರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು, ಇದು ಹಿಂಸೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಸ್ವೀಕೃತಿ. ನಮಗ್ ಬರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದೊಂದು ಪಶ್ಚಾತ್ತಾಪ, ನಾನು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಕಲ್ಸಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು. ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಐ ವಿಡ್ರಾ ದಿಸ್ ವೆನ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲಿ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ವಾಸ್ ಹಾಟ್, ವಿಡ್ರಾಯಿಂಗ್ ನಾನ್ ಕೋಆಪರೇಷನ್ ಮೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಆ ಮನುಷ್ಯರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಈ ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತ, ನಮಗೆ ಪಶ್ಚಾತ್ತಾಪ ಮತ್ತು ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ನಿಧಾನವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡೋಣ, ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಲೈಫ್ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಐ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಟ್, ನಂದು ಜೀವನ ಶೈಲಿ ನಾನು ಬದಲಾಯಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ನಿಧಾನವಾಗಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಒಬ್ಬ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ, ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಯಾರು ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ನಾನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅನ್ನೋಕ್ಕೂ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಡಿ. ನೋಡಿ, ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಏನ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೇನು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಸಿಗೋಕ್ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತಪ್ಪ. ಅದು ನನಗೆ ಹಂಗ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಇನ್ನೇ ಇದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಎಂಥ ಏನು ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರಲ್ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ಸ್ ಇರೋಲ್ಲ. ಕಾನೂನ ಇದೆ, ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಇದೆ, ಪ್ರೊವಿಷನಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಯಾರಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರು. ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಪಾಪ ಎಷ್ಟು ಹೋರಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಆ ಹೋರಾಟಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನಲ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಸ್ ತಂದ್ವಿ. ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಡುವಾಗ ಅದೇ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಬಂತು. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಆಟಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್, ಬಿಹೇವಿಯರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಹೃದಯದಿಂದಾನೇ ಆಗೋದು, ಸ್ವಯಂದಿಂದಲೇ ಆಗೋದು ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ. ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಟ್ರೈ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಟೂ ಲೇಟ್, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ನೆವರ್ ಟೂ ಲೇಟ್. ಓಕೆ.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಶೇಖರ್ ಸರ್, ಶೇಖರ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಭವನ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರು ಸರ್. ನನಗೆ ಭಾಳ ಮೆಚ್ಚುಗೆ ಆಗಿದೆ ಏನಂದರೆ ಸರ್, ನೀವು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಕೂಡ ನಿರಾಶೆ ಆಗಬಾರ್ದು, ಗುಣಾತ್ಮಕವಾದದ್ದನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕನ್ನೋ ಮಾತುಗಳು ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸೇರಿದಾಗೆ ತುಂಬ ನಮಗೆ ಧೈರ್ಯ ತಂದಿದೆ ಸರ್. ಯಾಕೆಂತಂದರೆ ನಿರಾಶೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಲೇ ಇರ್ತದೆ ಸರ್. ಆದಷ್ಟು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಥಿಂಕಿಂಗ್ಸ್, ಐ ಆಮ್ ವೆರಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ತುಂಬ ಸಂತೋಷ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು. ಮತ್ತೆ ನನಗೆ ಭಾಳ ಸಂತೋಷ ಅಂದರೆ ನಾವು ನೆನ್ನೆಯಿಂದ ಎದೆದಕೊಂಡೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ನೀವು ಆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಮಾತಾಡಿ ತುಂಬ ಧೈರ್ಯ ತುಂಬಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಭಾಳ ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್. ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತು ನಮಗೆ, ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಜ ಅದಲ್ವಾ. ಆ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಮಾತಾಡಿ ತಲುಪುವ ರೀತಿ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ತಲುಪಿದ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ವಿಶೇಷವಾದ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳು ಸರ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದ.
ಬಹಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Really beautiful.
And I hope to meet you again sometime. Love to listen to you again. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಸರ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದ. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಬ್ಯೂಟಿಫುಲ್. ಗಾಂಧಿ ಒನ್ಗೆ ನಂಬರ್ ಕೊಡಿ. ಓಕೆ ಸರ್. ಓಕೆ. ಈಗ 12 ಮುಖ ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಟೈಮ್ ಕೊಡಿ. ಮೇಸ್ಟ್ರು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ 12 ಮುಖ. ಓಕೆ.
Sorry, Professor Sridhar.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, sorry, we were a bit behind the schedule.
Oh, no problem.
Some 10-15 minutes because there was some technical problems, so we had to adjust with that. So thank you so much for being with us, Professor Sridhar Balagar. He is a novelist, and he is going to talk to us about Gandhiji's imaginary village and its reality. Basically, Sridhar is a novelist, and I am very glad to share this with you that his novel is getting translated into English it is done by my teacher, Professor Krishnamurthy Chandar. And I would take briefly some 5 minutes to introduce Sridhar Balagar to the participants and the participants assembled here. Sridhar Balagar is basically from Kumta. He's settled there, and he has a lot of works to his credit. Important works are Adavmukha in 1995, Mukantara 1998, Ile Emba Kanasu 2003, Ondu Photo the Negative 2008, Isad Tawa Jiva 2015. These are all short story collections. Then Ketakiya Bana 2003, Adu Kala 2014, Mrigashira 2019. These are the novels he has penned. Ratabidi 2009, Kalapallata 2011. These are the articles. Maladashtu Hu 2019 is a collection of his writings. He has all his stories, his articles, his novels are translated into English, Tamil, Urdu, and it is also part of the Karnataka University, Dharwad, Bangalore University, and Belagavi's Radichanama University as part of the syllabus of these universities. And many of his stories are also found adaptations into the theater. And he has also translated Kuvempu's Bhathabharati, Peter Watson, and Nirmal Verma's some writings into English. He has won Karnataka Sahitya Academy Award 3 times. He's also won Masti Puraskara Award, Niranjana Sahitya Award, Shimoga Karnataka Sangha's U.R. Anantmurthy Katha Prashasti, Dara Bendre Sahitya Puraskara 2, Varamballi Pratishtana Katha Prashasti, Vardhamana Udayonmukha Sahitya Prashasti, Dr. Beskaralli Ramanna Samsmarana Sahitya Prashasti, Ajura Pustaka Pratishtana Prashasti, Amma Prashasti, and Baraguru Pustaka Prashasti. These are some of the awards he has, won. And it's a pleasure to have you, Professor Sridhar Balagar, with us. Thank you so much. And I apologize for the slight delay, and you can have your time, and you please let us know when you want to stop. We can always ask the audience later to respond. Now I welcome Professor Sridhar Balgar, novelist and a Gandhian from Kumta, to deliver his plenary talk, Gandhiji's Imaginary Village and Its Reality. Sridhar Balgar, please.
Okay, and thank you, Professor Vijaya Sheshadri, for your kind words. First of all, am I audible? Am I audible or not?
Yes. No
okay, okay. And it is so nice to see you all. And in a way, I'm actually honored by your presence there. And I'm grateful to Center for Gandhian Studies, University of Mysore. And I'm equally thankful to Department of English, University of Mysore, for having created this wonderful opportunity to reflect and enlighten on Gandhi's thought. So that is, I am very happy here. So my presentation will be in two parts. The first part of my presentation deals with the text which is based upon Gandhiji's Hind Swaraj. And the second part deals with the context in which how the textual materials, textual Gandhian values are translated in a small village. So that is why I would like to deal with these two things. And personally, I feel that Gandhiji was not such an intelligent man, but he was a man of wonderful imagination. Because imagination is necessary to understand reality. Because the man who is having that power of imagination can understand life is in totality, in combination, in a holistic perspective. So that is why imagination is more real than reality. That is what I feel. So that is why I would like to speak about Gandhiji's imaginary village. The ones I think who have studied history keep realizing a single truth over and over again, which is history misinterprets and misunderstands the works of the great people and the thoughts of the world. When I read their books and when I think about them, I'm always reminded of something that the American thinker and the poet Emerson said once. He says, "To be great is to be misunderstood." It means that common people and the so-called intellectuals generally misunderstand the works of the great people. It might be their fortune or unfortune that this has happened throughout history. Perhaps Emerson's words are quite apt to describe Gandhi's life and his writings, I believe so. Because Hind Swaraj is one of the very few important books in the world, and it can easily be among the top 10 lists. Gandhi and Gandhi's Hind Swaraj has been misunderstood and misinterpreted a lot. I think that Hind Swaraj had the most attention in the form of debates, articles, speech, attention from the new outlets, which try and interpret the book in their own means. But the content of this is very important for me. The content of Hind Swaraj has been reduced to a mere research material. It has become a matter of research. And not often has it been explained or experimented the way it is meant to be. I'm not saying that it has not happened. It has happened very few times. But by and large, it has become a research material alone, and we have seen it happen throughout history. Today, we speak about global village, but Gandhi speaks about a local village. I read Hind Swaraj from the perspective of global village in comparison with his local village. And I try to understand it from the idea of Gandhi's village. Like Gandhi has said about Gandhi's village in Hinsaraj, it is an imagined village, no doubt about it. And I was also under the same impression like it was Gandhi's dream village, which had not come into fruition yet and has found a permanent place in his dreams. And that Gandhi gave us a picture of his ideal village system. But then, when I started thinking about it, I realized that it was not just an imaginary village, but perhaps such a system existed in pre-British and pre-industrial periods in India. And even today, if not in a large scale, we have a few villages that can conform to Gandhi's ideas. What we are seeing today is that Gandhi once said that the fortune of India or the future of India is in villages. We have misunderstood it to mean that Gandhi's village or India's freedom from village is our greatest challenge. I would like to share one thing in this instance, Gandhi's dream village, where India's common people freedom lies in, where we believe Gandhi said the modern man's freedom lies in villages that too had not been brought into reality satisfactorily. In reality, his dreams haven't been fulfilled yet. Even Ambedkar's vision of urbanization and technological advancement had not been brought to reality satisfactorily yet. Thus, Gandhi's vision or Gandhi's village and Ambedkar's vision had not been converted to reality. And in fact, it has held us in shackles today. To think about Gandhi's village in a simplistic manner, it is a small space. Gandhi's idea of an ideal village cannot be a large structure. It has to encompass a small geopolitical space. It is a self-reliant space. Even today, when understanding Swaraj, we will have to include the ideas of home rule and self-rule. Gandhi has very clearly said that home rule is only possible if we have a self-rule. That is why it means we should be very vigilant about our desires, our morality, our behavior, our character, etc. That will naturally form a basis for our home rule. So here is a system where we reject abundance in wealth, physical wealth, and incorporate a simple living. What I describe as Gandhi's village characteristics, that is a small system, self-reliance, where excessive desires are suppressed in an ethical manner, and a mellow space of living. These characteristics ought to be prevalent in a Gandhian village as proposed by Gandhi himself. What is surprising is that these characteristics that Gandhi described were the same ones that the British discredited these ideas as being uncivilized and archaic. This is the irony of the history. What seemed civilian to Indians seemed uncivilized to them, to the British, because of two main reasons. One is that the villages haven't incorporated large machinery. That's the first one. And the second is that a city-centric lifestyle does not exist there. Thus, the British started pushing these ideas on us, where living in a simple, self-reliant life that is slow-paced opposes modern living. It is sad that we have believed it, as well as it is said in the history books also. What Gandhi has said is that the large mechanical machines be it in villages or cities, can be effectively used to control and oppress people, a concept which has been essayed in the history books according to the British themselves. Secondly, as the use of machines increases, a kind of abundance in slavery develops uninhabited. The machines that build the cities tend to make the simple village folk depend on such machinery, which in itself is a kind of irreversible oppression, as Gandhi has said. So in such circumstances, we tend to question if Gandhi was an active opposer of machinery. This is a question I would like to put myself. But he was not opposed to using machinery. Gandhi said that the use automated or automatic machinery tends to make people forget about their true work and workmanship, which is the greatest disease. I would like to repeat it. So, which is the greatest disease of the modern civilized world. Thus, we have to protect our tradesmanship, which will flourish if we incorporate machinery, that is automatic machinery. Gandhi also said another thing. We have this singer machine. We are talking about singer machine. It is a tailoring machine, as you know, and there is a small story behind this tailoring machine. This singer could not bear to watch this wife working tirelessly, sticking cloths late into the night. So he invented this portable sewing machine, which is this singer machine that we are using now. Gandhi accepted this machine, singer's machine. What this means is that we can use machines that human can operate. It is not the machine which operate human beings, but the human beings should operate the machines. That is the thing here. And Gandhi, if you call it joke, Gandhi jokes that a human body is itself a machine. So he says, I cannot oppose the use of machinery. But when machines begin to play a larger role in our lives, we tend to forget our workmanship. And he said it over and over again, that we don't need mass production, but we need production by mass. It is quite an old saying. I don't want to say it again. What it means is that only a few with the knowledge and the resources can take over the world with the use of automatic machinery, which is a disease to the society. This is a disease, Gandhi identified it. That should not happen, he says. Everyone has the right to a small piece of profit in production, which is why large machinery ought to be opposed. And what is curious to me is that modernity is a disease, and it is a curable disease. This is a very interesting thing. Modernity, what Gandhi said, was like a disease that keeps recurring and vanishing. He is very optimistic about the modernity is going off. And we don't have to worry much about it, but we have to cure it effectively. And the cure lies in our society. That does not mean that just because Gandhi believed that the cure for modernity lies within our ancient societal values, does not mean that he had not forgotten the societal evils within our ways of living in the society. It can be untouchability or casteism, racism, which are social evils within our society. We do accept it. He was quite adamant about fighting against these. Along this, the reason why Gandhi is revered, respected as a holistic thinker is because apart from fighting against untouchability, casteism, inequality in the society, he also, this is very important, he also opposed blindly adopting modernity in the form of automatic machinery, which we falsely believe to be our salvation. So as Gandhi opposed the mass integration of machinery in the society, he also opposed untouchability and other societal evils with the same gusto. Another important thing I need to say here is that Gandhi's dream village is no longer just a dream, but It exists in reality in some places, even if it is just in an experimental phase. Such societies have been defined in two ways by him. One of the concerns of this primary way of living in the village is defined using two analogies here, metaphors. A society that incorporates the ethics of sustenance within its lifestyles cannot support a pyramid structure. This is a very important metaphor used by Gandhi, the pyramid structures. Pyramid is an important word he used. Our pyramid has a wide base which narrows as you go up. Pyramid is an important word he used, and as you know, Gandhi does not accept this pyramid structure in society. The alternative structure he uses is that the small societal structure should be akin to the ocean waves or the sea waves. Our growth and development should be like waves, which come one behind the other and have a uniform look. So, Gandhi's ideal village does not have a place for pyramids, but just like how ripples form pond when you throw a pebble, where no ripple is big or small, every ripple is the same. Another important thing about Gandhi's village is that there are no temples. I would like to emphasize this statement. There are no temples in Gandhian imaginary village. Instead of temple, there are theaters. On one hand, we see Gandhi as a religious person, a spiritual person. And on another hand, it seems like a very progressive move to have theaters. So, an important and primary aspect of his dream village is agriculture. And not just that, it also has associated activities and small industries that support agriculture in that community. This is what I have understood from Gandhi's Hind Swaraj. And as an associated reading, I would like to talk about two stories which are not fictional stories, but real one. I would like to move to the second part. So where we can understand Gandhi's imaginary world came to a real thing here. This is the second part. This is the context in which how Gandhi's ideas and the values of imaginary village have been translated. That is why I have to give you two simple stories, Swaraj, of Gandhi village. So these are not the imaginary village, but the real village, which actually visited. The first one is a remote village in my district by name Deria in Joida Taluk of Uttara Kannada. Earlier, it was a Supa by name, and this is how we write in the map, in the earlier map. After the immersion of village in the Kali water dam, because a dam was built across the Kali river in Supa district, and it was renamed as Joida. Now it is called the Joida Taluk. And the evacuated village was the first victim of modernization. As a result of Kalyana Revolution, under the leadership of Basavanna, a great social thinker and reformer, Sharanas, or the devotees of Lord Shiva, came to stay in Udupi. Udupi is a small holy place nearby, I think, this place, Joida. Many Sharanas were killed. This is an interesting thing, you have to note it here. Many Sharanas were killed on the way to Udupi. The name of the village where some of the Sharanas were killed is Kwanduru. Kwanduru means it is the village where Sharanas were killed ruthlessly here. It means a village where people or the Sharanas or the devotees of the Shiva were killed. Others hid in the caves with their vachanas and survived. This another, I think, unfortunate thing happened in that area. This area was severely affected by drought and resulted in the mass migration of the people. And another important tragedy, I think this village exposed to that's a tragedy also in the history. Epidemic disease like plague and malaria hit the community, killing a large number of people, and the entire village has become a graveyard. Recently, another important, I think, tragedy happened recently here. Recently, this area was declared as a national park and tiger reserve, and a political strategy is on to evacuate the people who have been living through the years there. There is a tribal community which resisted, this is very important. See, despite of all this encroachment, this kind of attack, internal as well as external, this a small tribal community resisted this encroachment and is still they are staying there. It is interesting to know the secret behind the power of resistance. There are still a few innocent communities living in the country today, regardless of the impact of history. They are out of history in a way, and the pressure of the current events. This tribe is also doing the same thing here. They are free from burden of history and future plan of savings of money and wealth. It means that they liberated themselves from the clutches of past and the future. These tribal people are one such communities which I visited actually. They are living simple and natural life in the sense that they don't have desires beyond basic survival necessity. Self-rule is the primary condition of non-violence. They know it. They use land, this is very important. They use land for paddy farming, not for any other commercial purpose. Even they don't grow any commercial, I think, food grains or something like that. They believe the principle mud for food. The mud or the soil should not be used other than growing paddy or some food grains. They practice collective ownership of land governance. So there is no single or the head of the family who is the owner of the land. No, it is not like that. They follow traditional organic agriculture method traditionally. They grow food grains and cultivate sugar cane. That sugar cane, even though it is a commercial crop, that is not for sale. So that is for home use. They have medical plants and herbal shampoos and soap from the forest nearby. All family disputes are settled within the village community by the local priest called Mirashi. He is the priest of that community who has to settle all the kind of, disputes and other things. In this way, they pursue the traditional principles of self-supporting, mutual dependence in life. Agriculture, this is very important. Agriculture is a way of life, not a means of earning money, not a means of earning money here. Growing a crop for hunger without falling into the infatuation of money had no chance for selfishness. They do not look upon money and gold as a matter of value. This is another very important and interesting thing. It was interesting to me that in these modern times, 4 generations of families live together and are solely concerned with the cultivation of paddy. You may not believe that more than 100 people have been living under one roof. There is only one grand house. In that one, they live together. I inquired about that unity. What is the secret behind that collective family, joint family? The senior man of the house told that no member of the family has a private property and separate savings against their account. Land cultivation, celebration of festivals, arrangement of marriages, and the collective responsibility of the entire family. There are certain inherent code of conduct followed in the community. People are allowed to go to the neighboring towns for the pursuit of higher education. They are allowed to go to neighboring towns for educational purpose with a condition, that's a very important condition, with a condition to return to their respective work and village. Whatever they learn and whatever they understand, that should be used for the community, for the welfare of the community. The intent is to keep the resources of native people for the use of the local development. Being afraid of losing their identity, this is also another interesting thing. They would speak only their mother tongue, Marathi Konkani mixed language, and never try to learn to use any other language. Even marriages are arranged within the community also. They have wandering gods, not a settled fixed gods. They have wandering gods in the forest. They build simple temples for temporary stay for them. It is not customary for the devotee to lock the door of the temples. The firm belief is that people who are not infatuated with money can't become thieves. They are not after money. They are least bothered about gold and money. So that is why they say they are not the victim of any kind of desires. That's why they are not thieves. And another thing is they have open air theater in the middle of the village instead of the temple. The temples are there in the forest and theater is in the middle of the village. This is quite interesting. This is not to say that Deria, it is the name of the village I mentioned here, is not open to modernity. Youths are using motorbike, cell phones. Some young people operate rental vehicles because of the tourism. There are also generators of small amount of dynamo power from the small tree, but they are not depending upon automatic machines. The young people are engaged in complementary work related to ecotourism and agriculture. They sell the natural products of the forest like honey, mushroom, etc. for day-to-day other, I think, needs to fulfill. They manage homestay, not the resort. They love green forest, a bright kingdom of lush green fields, and they respect ancestors. Nothing had changed their taste of food. They never traveled, it's very important, they never traveled beyond their taluka town. Another image of village I'm introducing, this is the one village I visited, and I would like to mention another important village nearby Kumta I visited. The name of the village is Bada. It is not a Kanakas Bada, it is another Bada. So this village is a small village on the Arabian seashore in Uttar Kannada district in Kumta Taluk. So there is an old handloom house. Handlooms are making noise in the wake of the freedom struggle. The loom was started by a few freedom fighters inspired by the visit of Vinod Bhave long ago to help the poor wage migrants. They used to say people and the working class people from coastal, they migrate every year from coastal area to Malnad and other places. So that is why to help the poor wage migrants who left the coast in search of work and keep them from where they were born. 80 years ago, there were hundreds of handlooms weaving cloth. Now, sadly, only 6 to 7 looms have come to life. They are, I think, working. The rest of the looms remained silent at the sigh of the end of the day. Those who have been working on handlooms have passed 60. Their wages are meager, but they are blessed in health and happiness of every moment. Don't think that I'm glorifying their poverty. They are constantly moving in a constant rhythm without being subjected to any external or internal stresses or the tensions. At any time, they can sit in front of the loom and they close down. There is no fear of bureaucracy. Physical exercise throughout the work, on the other hand, is the satisfaction of having produced the cloth in the event of meditation. The cloth is produced out of the meditation, not on the loom. This is a very important thing. They are indebted to the loom that has been pasted into their home, towns, festivals, fairs, wedding, games. They cannot live apart from these things. Loom works have their own house, backyard, and paddy fields that can be grown for rice for the year. Their children are on the path to progress, installing a small shop, some skill-based work in their village. It is customary to build a chariot, Ratha, Theru, we'd like to call, because coastal area is, I think, famous for many types of Theru, Jatras, for the annual fair festival of the local deity. People from all classes and castes come together to build the chariot by sharing different work. It shows that this is another important metaphor I'm using here. It is a living metaphor of cultural unity and diversity of the community. So these are two small villages with many yes here: self-sufficiency, self-control, there is a autonomy and sustainability. So these are, for me, these are not imaginary world, but the real world I really experienced. That what Gandhi once said, imaginary village, which I actually experienced in my life. So this is all about Gandhi's concept of imaginary village, and it is how we can actually experience. It is no more an imaginary village, but it is a real village, but not a large scale, but in an exceptional case, it is there. It is there. Okay, this is fragmentary ideas I shared so far with you. Still, I'm the student of Gandhian studies, so that I don't expect very, because the session is always with many questions, many queries and other things. As I'm the student of Gandhian studies, if there are questions, if it is possible for me to answer, I'm ready. But don't expect it, because earlier I informed to Professor Shishadri, don't expect much from me. Even he has used the word Gandhian. I don't know, I doubtful whether I'm Gandhian or not, I don't know. But if permit, there is the interaction session.
Thank you so much, Sridhar, for that wonderful, talk where you took us to the real village, which actually Gandhi dreamt of. And thanks for also giving us information about how these villages still exist and how people have a very self-reliant and, very fulfilling kind of life, that they are experiencing even today. I'll have a quick, summary of what you've said so that the participants can respond to your, paper. Now, Professor Sridhar has talked about how histories are misread and misinterpreted, and then he also talks about how when we are talking about global village today, Gandhi talks about the local village, and he also very vividly gives us the definition of what is Gandhi's idea of a village, or what is Gandhian village: a very small space, a very self-reliant space where there are no machineries, there's no city-centric quality, and everyone needs, to earn a little bit of profit, if not, in large scale. And he also draws our attention to modernity and shows how it is a recurring phenomenon according to Gandhi, and he doesn't bother about it, and how it, can move away and it can be cured. And he brings in two important symbols. One of the pyramid structure, which Gandhi rejects in his imaginary village, and then the real self-reliant village is, it should be like the ocean waves. And the other issue which he talks about is that there should be no temples and theaters should be there, and the Gandhian village will have agriculture and small industries that support it. And this is what Sridhar has done in his paper. I'm very glad that it was a very insightful paper with, two distinct parts in it. One, what is Gandhi's idea of a village, and the other one, the real existing Gandhi's village that you introduced us into. Thank you so much, Sridhar, for being with us. I once again apologize for that slight delay.
Thank you so much.
He's there with us, and I'm very glad that you are with us and amidst us today. So you can take questions now. I request the participants to respond to Sridhar Balagar's paper. It's open and participants can ask questions. Milan, just check if there are any questions in the inbox.
Yeah.
Sridhar, I would like to know from you, is it really possible for these communities which you are referring to, the village that exists in reality today with the Gandhian notion and ideas, to what extent they have resisted this influence of technology, and how they are negotiating and preserving their cultural practices, their cultural spaces, vis-a-vis the arrival of technology into the remotest of villages in India. So I would like to know, because you have a first-hand experience in those villages.
So there are two, I think, generation people.
Yeah.
The younger generations are slowly, they try to incorporate this machinery and modernity. And there is a kind of rift between the younger generation and older generation also. But the so-called older generation people, they resist at the individual level, not the institutional level. So they would like to apply, because these people are not aware of the principles or the values stated in Hind Swaraj. No, they have not read Hind Swaraj. Absolutely, they are not aware of what is being written in Hind Swaraj. Even they don't know, some of them don't know Gandhi, name of the Gandhi also. But quite interestingly, whatever Gandhi theoretically imagined or theoretically interpreted are naturally, I think, latent in that style of life through the ages. This is quite interesting. But the one thing is they keep quiet, and because when I think they are given modern amenities, then when they are evacuated from their original places, I think they are tempted to leave their place. No, they are not ready to leave their place. They are still there, and they are doing their own traditional life. But as I already told you, the government has many important plans to evacuate them, and still they are, I think, fighting against them, and they are not living, and a lot of turmoil is there going on in that area, and there is a clash within the community, and a clash between the community and the government machinery is still going on. But I don't know. So as far as their personal life, so they never bother about these modernity, machines and all these things. As I told you now, even some people never traveled beyond their hometown. Still they are there. But it is a very, I think, a community of limited people living together. So there is one. I am still curious to know what will happen. So in this space, what will happen, because these younger generation people are, I think, slowly accepting that homestay, and even though they are not ready to leave that village, even then, so they are slowly, I think, inclining towards the commercial crop, slowly. But that is why there is a kind of threat, no doubt about it. After some say 10 years, the picture will become completely different, definitely. But that model is still living, no? It is still working, no? So that is a good, I think, model for me.
True. Go.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. I have a small question. Sir, you pointed out that in the beginning, Gandhiji is not an intelligent man. You hope so, but he is a wonderful imaginary person. Sir, I hope to imagine we need an intellectual and intelligent. So, how do you agree and how do you consider that? The differences between intelligent and imaginary. Intelligence and imaginary. And laterly you compare between Gandhiji and Ambedkar urbanization. So how did you measure the differences between these two people? That is my question.
Okay, I think you would like to know the exact meaning of the concept intelligence and imagination. And as far as my knowledge is concerned, my limited knowledge is concerned, the intelligent man is one, his mind is working on logical principles. He is able to analyze, he is able to, I think, classify, he is able to logically interpret the things. And these are what we call intelligent exercise of the mind. With the help of his, I think, memory and informations, he knows how to, I think, manage, interpret, manipulate these ready-made information. That is the intelligent way of looking at. But there is a possibility of missing the integrated whole. Because as you know, when I think Einstein was interviewed by one of the journalists, he asked, what is important to Mr. Einstein, intelligence or imagination for your invention in science? Without second thought, Einstein answered, imagination. Because without imagination, that is why I told you in the beginning, so a man of reality can understand only the physical identity or the physical existence of the world. The man of imagination can beyond what is there behind the physical existence or something away from it or beyond it. So that requires imagination. It is not the question of intelligence. So imagination means it is the capacity to grab some reality in its totality, in combination, not in isolation. So Gandhi is a man with this kind of insightful vision to grasp the thing in its entire dimensions, in its diversified, I think, holistic dimensions. It is possible. So that is the exact difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar. So you asked me to show what is the difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar. Let me, I think, tell you in brief. So Ambedkar, even though he is a member of our family, he left the house. And while leaving the house, he believed that, he concluded that this is not a repairable house. So that is why he left the house and he wanted to build another house, comfortable house for him. It may be a modern house. But Gandhi says, no, we can get it repaired. So that is why Gandhi stayed in the same house. He tried to, house means here metaphorically I'm using. So in the same house and tried to get it repaired. So that is the difference between these two, understand. But personally, I feel Gandhi is what is the imaginative village and Ambedkar's the imaginative urban world failed. Failed in the sense he failed it. And they are not actually concretely materialized in a modern world. So that is the thing here. I don't know whether I answered your question or not. I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Are there any questions for the participants who are virtually connected to us? Any questions? Box ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆಯಾ ನೋಡಿ, ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ ನೋಡಿ. Professor Jeevan, you have a question for Sridhar?
Yeah. If there's time, is there time? It's already 2 o'clock. Is there time?
It's okay.
Okay, Sridhar, ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು ಕೇಳೋದು. I mean, I like the way you even made your presentation. My question is, in the village you referred to, is there a Gram Sabha? Is deliberative democracy practiced? Are decisions taken through consultative processes? That was my question, because I don't think you referred to the concept of Gram Sabha. But otherwise, I liked your presentation very much, Sridhar.
So Gram Sabha is their own Gram Sabha. It is not, I think, a politically organized, elected body. It is not like that. It is there. Village Panchayat anodala ide alli. But this community, this particular community has its own traditional sabha, traditional what you call organizations. And there's a lot of difference between the way their traditional organizations work and the so-called village panchayat, and that is political, I think, strategy and political process. The village panchayat and ತಕ್ಷಣ ಅದು ಬೇರೆ ಅದು ಇದೆ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಕ್ಲಾಶ್ ಇದೆ. ಯಾವುದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತು ಮಂಡಲ ಪಂಚಾಯತ ಮತ್ತು ಇತ್ಯಾದಿಗೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಮತ್ತೆಗೇನೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿಯವರು ತಾವೇ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಂತ ತಾವೇ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಂತ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದು ಬೇರೆ ಇದೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಬೇರೆ ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ವಿಲೇಜ್ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಇಷ್ಟಂದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಮಾಡರ್ನಿಟಿಯನ್ನ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಅಕ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲೇ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದ್ದ ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಹೊಸ ರೀತಿಯಾದಂತ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಡಿಸ್ಗೈಸ್, ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಡಿಸ್ಗೈಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದು ಆಗಿದೆ ಅದು. ಆದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಹಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬೀಯಿಂಗ್ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ಡ್, ಬಟ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ಟರ್ಮ್. ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ಡ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಗಾಂಧಿ ಹಿಂದ್ ಸ್ವರಾಜ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. But quite interestingly, curiously, it is there. They are not conscious. ಬಹುಶಃ ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೋದೇನೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ. The moment they are aware of they are practicing Hind Swaraj or democratic style of life, I think there is a possibility of danger of losing it. ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸ್ತದೆ ನನಗೆ.
Thank you, Sridhar. Good answer.
Okay.
There's one last question. One time for one last question there. Somebody wanted to ask.
Hello.
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 Meera here.
Yeah, please make it very brief.
No, it's not even a question actually. Thank you, Sridhar ji, for a very, very succinct, empirical, picture presentation. ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅಂಡ್ ಆ ಕುಂಟ ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಕೂಡ. ಬಹಳ ನೀವ್ ಹೇಳಿದಂಗೆ ಈಗ್ಲೂ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನನ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾ ಹೋಗಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವರ್ಷಗಳಾಯ್ತು. ನೀವ್ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ನಂಗೆ ನೆನಪಾಗಿದ್ದು, ನಾನು ಇಸ್ರೇಲ್ ಪ್ರಯಾಣ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಕರ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು. ಆಗ ವೆರಿ ಸಿಮಿಲರ್ಲಿ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ವಿಸಿಟೆಡ್ ಕಿಬುಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಮಶಾವ್. ಈ ಮಶಾವ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಿಬುಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಗಾಂಧಿಯನ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೂಯೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದು. ಈಗ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಬೇರೆಯ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಡಿಸೆಂಟ್ರಲೈಸ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟೀಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಿಬುಟ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶೂರ್ ಜೀವನ್ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂನು ಇದು ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಹಿ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಅವೇರ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದಿಸ್. ಸೊ ನಂಗೆ ಅದು ನೆನಪಾಯ್ತು ನೀವ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ. ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಗಾಂಧಿಯ ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಕನಸಲ್ಲ ನನಸು ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ವಿಶ್ವಾದ್ಯಂತ ಹಲವು ರೀತಿಯ ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳು ಮತ್ತೆ ಮಾದರಿಗಳು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷ. ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಹಳ ಅವರು ಎಫೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿ ವಿಕೇಂದ್ರೀಕೃತವಾದಂತ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸರ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮರ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆ ಆಗಿ ಅವರಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಅವರು ಮೆಷಿನರಿ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರೀಸ್ ಕೂಡ ಓನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಮಶಾವು ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಿಬುಟ್ಸ್ ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ. ಹಲೋ, ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ? ಹಲೋ,
ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
ಓಕೆ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಶ್ರೀಧರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹಲೋ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಐ ವಾಂಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಶೇರ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸೋ ಮಚ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Thank you, Meera. Are there any questions?
No questions.
Nobody there.
Thanks everybody.
No, somebody. Host is not allowing until the yaaradu. Avrena. Okay. Thank you, Sridhar, for that wonderful talk. And we break for lunch, and I request the participants to reassemble here by 2:45 for the last plenary talk of this webinar. Thank you.